So there are a lot of videos out there about the CCIE lab, like, it's in 2 parts, it's in 3 parts, that type of stuff. But what we're going to try to do today is if you've never gone to the CCIE lab, kind of give you an idea of what you're going to face, what you're going to be thinking is kind of the main topic, because it's Cisco's going to play mind games with you, and you got to know how Cisco thinks, right? Know how they grade. Get a feeling of what type of questions they're going to ask you. We're not going to tell you exactly what they're going to ask you, but we're going to tell you something like, the stuff that you're used to typing is not what you're going to get. Right? And Tim knows exactly what I'm talking about.
Yes.
So before we actually get to our nitty-gritty here, we've got a couple announcements, some recent passes. I just got an email like 2 hours ago. Someone passed their CCNP route. So congratulations.
Congratulations.
Yeah. I don't know. Let's see if he's in the meeting. It's Paul. Another Paul. I actually met him at one of our in-person meetups down here in Southern California at Panera Bread. And so he's gearing up for a CCNP switch. So that's good. We have, as I said, we have several people pass CCIE. Now, when I say we have several people pass CCIE, it's not like we do it for them. It's not like, we've helped them that much. It's just, they're members. They may have gone into a couple study groups. I mean, they do all the hard work. They do 99.9% of the hard work. It's not like because of RouterGods they pass. No, that's not what we mean by that. Job opportunities. I'm talking with a recruiter from, maybe I shouldn't mention it, but he wants an opportunity to where he wants to post job opportunities to our list. So they're mainly Southern California, but this company, I believe, offers stuff all around the U.S. So we'll be having that. And, of course, if you know of any job opportunities, just chuck it on the list. You don't need to ask me. Just throw it on the Cisco System17@meetup.com email address, because I'm sure some people are looking for jobs. Right. Future meetings. What I want to plan on doing is having meetups talking about the tech market in different areas of the U.S. So if you're interested in coming to Southern California, but you don't know exactly like where to go, where to live, how expensive, how cheap, stuff like that, where the jobs are, we're going to have a talk about Southern California, Orange County, for people who want to go to what's another hot job market. Let's say New York. Then we'll talk about New York. Austin is another like booming place. Austin, Dallas, basically all of Texas, stuff like that. San Francisco, Silicon Valley. So I want to have like different people who actually live there and work at those places run a meetup for that location, right? Because I know some people we're nomadic. We like to move around, or at least I do. I'm not married, so I don't care. Right? We can go wherever. We have flexibility.
You go all across the world, man.
That's right. That's right. And also, good old Alex. He's on the meetup. He gave a suggestion about a possible series of creating a network for a small business and having it grow organically. So let's say we have a mom and pop store. They'll want to put in a Linksys. Okay, so starting from there, what Linksys would you buy? Why would I buy this Linksys? Okay, they add a couple more computers. What switch would we look into getting? Mom and pop store is growing up to be 10 employees. What do you buy? So kind of start off in the first session with maybe a small packet tracer diagram, and as we go through the meetings, it grows and grows and grows until they become like mega corporation, right? Because I think one of the things we lack at RouterGods is we do a lot of config, but I don't think we do a lot of design, like talking about different designs, And I get emailed once in a while about, hey, I want to do high availability. How do I do this? So good skill to have. Right? Okay, here we go. So speakers today, myself. You guys all know me, Humphrey Cheung. We've got Tim Cribbs on the mic. CCIE 42803, active duty U.S. Marine Corps.
Hoorah.
Cyber Network Operations Chief. He was my classmate at Narbix Boot Camp.
Actually, in your hack pad there, I saw you put our picture up there.
Yeah, so if we scroll down here. I can't believe that's been more than a year.
Yeah, I'm sitting right next to you.
Yeah, so right there, right in the front, that's me. That's good old Randy. He attempted his lab. A couple other guys. This guy
Dennis right behind you.
Yeah.
Dennis right there in the green.
Yeah.
Well, if you haven't noticed, so these events that Narbix classes and whatnot, you build camaraderie amongst you guys because you're going through all this together. I know I saw Humphrey's going to touch on this in a minute, but that's absolutely true, and it's very important because you need someone to help you out get through this very, very long journey. So I mean, Humphrey has helped me out tremendously with what he has done. So I can't stress that enough.
Yeah. And we all keep in touch with each other. We all email each other. I mean, to varying degrees, like about 5 people from this class that I keep in touch a lot.
Yep. Me too.
It's like, oh, did you pass? Do you need any help? Do you need any books? It's just all this stuff. And it's not just CCIE study. It's jobs too. I mean, from the other Narbix classes, because I redo them like quite a bit. And we pass jobs around. If a guy has a job that he doesn't have time for, he'll pawn it off. He'll say, hey, I've got something in Irvine. Are you interested? Stuff like that. So we'll talk about boot camps later. And there's a question like, they are expensive. I mean, don't get me wrong. It's money, but I think it is worth it. And this was taken on the first day or first or second day because we're all smiling.
Yeah, exactly.
We'll talk about we'll talk about that a little later. So Tim, just take it away with a little bit about your background and what exactly does a cyber network operations chief do?
Okay. Well, I've got about just a little over 10 years in the networking industry. The whole time in the Marine Corps. I got CCNA in about 2008, I believe, and then it took me a little bit to get through the CCNP. I started it before they changed the version, and then so I had to continue through it when they added the troubleshooting. So Cyber Network Operations Chief, that's just you have your Cyber Network Operations operators, and then your chief, and then the information assurance guys, the security guys, and everything. So I'm basically router switch guy, as a matter of fact. That's what I do. We do have other paths. You can be a server guy. You could be a VoIP guy. I did a VoIP for a little bit there. When I was in Iraq, I did about 12 months of VoIP out there. So it's pretty much a little bit of everything. I chose to specialize in Cisco. And then I haven't really been doing that for the past 3.5 years. I've been at the Pentagon. That's where I'm at right now. And I just basically monitor a bunch of circuits that are pretty important for some important people. And it gets really boring, and I really can't do anything with them. I just make sure they're up. And if they're not, I call someone. So I had a lot of spare time on my hands, and I use that time to put that to use to study for CCIE. So I got to the unit as a CCNA, and I left. I'm going to leave as a CCIE, so I'm pretty happy about that. So,
Cool.
Yep. That's about it.
Okay. And so myself, four lab attempts. October, December in San Jose, the dungeon. We'll talk about the dungeon. And this is a good question. Miami in April and RTP back in May. And so Alex has a good question. What is next on your track? What are you looking to get now?
Oh.
Another CCIE?
Actually, yeah. I did put some thought into that, and I think I've decided to go data center. So
Yeah.
I've become friends with. Hold on, my son was just talking to me there for a second. Terry Vinson from IP Expert, and he just passed the CCIE data center. about a couple weeks ago. So he's offered to help me through my journey in that. So I think I'm gonna take that one.
Cool. Yeah, cool. And that seems to be a very common route. Routing and switching to data center right now is probably, I would say, the majority. And the second one, maybe security, a toss-up between security and voice or SP. We'll talk about the alternatives or what the other CCIEs you can get afterwards. We do have another person in our study group that's kind of didn't quite make it. We thought he was going to be the first one to pass out of all of us. Yeah, I mean technically he's better than me, and I thought he would get it, but he's pursuing CCIE in a different track, and he's going to come back towards it. But we'll talk about that later. Okay, so for those of you stuck under a rock, just a quick exam overview of the CCIE just for newbies, right? In a future meetup, we'll talk a little bit more about it. But in version 4, 2-hour troubleshooting, the killer of everyone, troubleshooting, 6-hour config. Version 5, you guys got lucky. Oh, well, I say lucky. Yeah, the jury's still out on that. It's still 2-hour troubleshooting, but you can extend up to 30 more minutes. So it's not a strict 30 minutes, it's up to 30 minutes. So if you need 10, you take 10. And those minutes are deducted from your config. So if you take 30 in troubleshooting, you're going to lose 30 in config. Diagnostic section, who knows? I'm not, whatever. They're going to give you packet debug and you figure it out. It's 30 minutes strict. You must take 30 minutes. You finish in 15, you're going to sit there for 15. It has to be 30, and the reason for that is they're grading your troubleshooting during diagnostic, right? So I saw from one forum that this guy failed. He passed troubleshooting, he passed config, he failed diagnostic because they couldn't get the diagnostic screen to come up, and it bombed on him, and he's very mad right now. So I would ask for a refund. Yeah, refund on that one. Okay. Mental preparation. This is big. If CCIE were just technical, I would know a whole lot of CCIEs out there. There'd be a lot more. It is technical, depending on your percentage, maybe 50, 60, 70%, right? You got to know how to configure. If you can't configure, you're not going to pass, right? But a big chunk of it is mental, knowing which questions to do first, knowing which questions not to do, right? We're all engineers. We want to do every question, but there's questions in the config in config where if you do them and you don't do them 100%, you blow everything up. And that happened to me twice in my lab attempts. I tried to do some layer 2 points at the end. Bad move. Really, really bad move. I wanted 2 points and I lost 40. So, and you're done. If you blow up layer 2, you're done. That's it. You just, uninstall Windows. That's it. And look, I mean, you're at a level where Cisco can throw the whole doc CD at you. I mean, yeah, they have a syllabus that you can look up. These are the topics, but at the very end of the syllabus or at the very end of the blueprint, they have this sentence. It's and other, as required or as needed. It's like a cop-out sentence that basically says we can chuck anything at you. And we'll talk about that in config or in the troubleshooting section. Now, I'm gonna stop at this sentence right here. But before starting CCIE, you need to ask yourself a couple questions. This is what I recommend, and Tim probably has more. But why do you want to get it? Right? If it's just for money, it's probably not going to work for you, because you could probably get the same or more money if you got some other certs. I'll just throw some, if you took your $15,000 that you spend on the boot camps and the tests, and you did you went ITIL, VMware, 3 CCNPs, and I don't know, like blue coat brocade, like some weird ones out there, you could probably make similar money, right? So ask yourself why you want to get it. Is it to become like the biggest and the baddest network dude? That's good too. Is it to get knowledge? That's good. Yeah, Kenneth says Juniper. Yeah, man. If you get a couple CCNPs and like a Juniper cert, Juniper people are hard to find. So, and then ask yourself, what are you willing to sacrifice? Because this is going to be a long journey, and it's not just going to be hours of studying. It's going to be like you're going to gain weight if you don't exercise. You're going to be hunched over on the keyboard. The keys on my keyboard are wearing out because I've labbed so much. Like they're fading. I probably have to get another laptop because the keys are shot. But free time with your kids. If you have kids and they're young, let's say they're less than a year old. Kids grow up fast, and they're going to be growing up while you lab. So think about that. And then how much are you willing to spend in terms of like in money, right? So a bad way of looking at CCIE is, I've heard this many, many times. I'm going to pass it on the first shot. I have to pass it on the first shot, right? Talk to people in Narvik class. I'm good. Pass on first shot. It's just maybe not the best way of looking at this, because it's going to be a shock to your system when, after that first day, or probably after the first 2 hours.
Yeah.
So I'll turn it over to you, Tim, for mental preparation right here.
All right. Let's see here. Well, I'm going to add on a couple of things that you were just talking about there. As far as you're asking yourself these questions, one big thing that I think is very, very important with anybody deciding to take this journey is you have to get your family's buy-in. I mean, if you're single, okay, just, this doesn't apply to you. But, if you're married, if you have kids, you got to have the talk with your family. And I did. And I explained to her how, I explained to her what I thought is what to expect, but you really never know what to expect until you get, waist deep into it. So I thought it was going to take maybe a year. It actually took 2. But, so you have to get the family buy-in. And once you get that, then that gives you the little push to get started. And then the other thing that could be pretty important is you have to what's the logistics of you actually studying? Do you actually have the time? Can you study from work? Can you remote into your lab or something like that? I actually ran into those problems myself. I had plenty of time at work. I was on a watch desk sitting there watching circuits all day, so I had 8 hours every shift where I couldn't study because I'm behind a DoD network. I was not allowed to VPN home, so I tried pretty much everything I could think of to access my home network from work, and I couldn't do it. So, I couldn't do it according to the rules. So, I had to use all my spare time, my at nights and on weekends and days off and holidays and everything, sitting at my computer desk. So, that was a big eye opener. I was kind of hoping I would be able to use my time at work, and I wasn't able to. So that's, if you try to figure that out beforehand, you kind of get an idea of what you're in for. If you are fortunate enough to have the equipment at work and you manage it and you have set your own self up a lab, great, that's perfect. But it could get as difficult as what I had to do. So that's all right. That's on that. Let's see, mental preparation. Yeah. So it's kind of hard to understand what it's hard to explain to someone what you need to understand as far as mental, because you really can't fully understand it until you start going through it. As you're going through like the first hurdle you're probably going to see is you got all these workbooks, and you're like, holy cow, I got a lot of workbooks. And you start going through them, and you get through them, and you get all the way to the end of a workbook, and then you go to the beginning, and you realize I don't remember 3/4 of the stuff I already went through. And, there's a barrier right there. You got to get through that. So you have to kind of find a way that works for you that, some people like to take one technology and go from front to back. and then move on to the next technology, go front to back. I think Narvik suggested that one. I prefer to take his book, which is actually three different books, and go through the books. And the books will go through like the foundations. We'll hit everything, the basic layers, and then his advanced workbook is next, and it goes through everything starting over like with layer 2 and then layer 3 and then multicast or whatnot. And then his boot camp books will start over again at layer 2 and then layer 3. So to me that worked better because every time I went back to a topic, I was able to remember a lot more of it. Whereas if I were to just go through if I were to just completely master frame relay, and then I didn't touch it for another month or two, then I would have lost so much of it. But to keep going back to it and back to it and back to it, that really helped. And once I realized that was what was happening, it really helped me out mentally. But you're going to get discouraged. You're going to have, like Humphrey mentioned, you're going to have your good days, you're going to have your bad days. And you just have to manage those bad days. You got to understand that, you know what, this is tough. This is hard. This is a lot of information. And they designed it to where you have to just immerse yourself into this lifestyle for this period of time to go in there and pass this test. So the mental part is a major part of it. You're going to have to get to the point to where, let's see, I'd say maybe a month before each attempt, I was sitting at my desk at least 8 hours, probably 10 to 12 hours a day. And that would get me mentally, build up my mental stamina to sit there and concentrate that long. Because at first, that's really hard. I mean, you get burnt out after a couple hours, especially with all this new stuff. You're going through new technologies, new ways of looking at things. Even as you're approaching the lab, it's really frustrating when you're going through something and you see something you never saw before. And you're like, oh, my God, really? Again? Here we go. So things like that, you just kind of expect are going to happen. You just deal with them, take them as they come, and do the best you can. But that stamina is very important because as you work up that stamina, you'll be able to concentrate longer during those periods. And so when I actually went to all three of my attempts, I took 3 attempts. First one failed miserably, like most people. Second one came pretty close. I just got hemmed up on two spots. And then, third one I got through. But each time I was pretty. Hold on one second. I'm sorry. Okay. So each time I was pretty. I didn't get wore out during the labs. I was pretty focused during the whole thing, and that was because to me it actually felt like when I was done with the config, I'm like, well, wow, that was pretty quick. It actually went by really quick. So what you don't want to do is you don't want to get your brain fried 2 hours before the finish of the config. So. That's a big portion of the mental. And then, yeah, Humphrey mentioned luck, and I did acknowledge that before I went into each of my labs. I'm like, please let the bits flow, please let the bits flow, because you never know. It could be something so simple, and yeah, it's going to be your fault. But I just hope that I happen to find a little memory of a lab I did at one time that fixed it. So. Yeah, bit gods. There you go. So, yeah, the mental preparation is very big. But as long as you have that vision, and the longer you're in this tunnel is what I like to think of it as a long tunnel. The longer you're in it, the more you've invested into it. So okay. So Humphrey's taken it 4 times. When I took it. Going in for my 3rd time, if I were to fail again, I'm more invested now than I ever have been, and I'm sure Humphrey's the same way. There's no turning back. You're going to get it. It's just a matter of when. So that's one thing that'll keep you going too. So just keep those things in mind, and that as you're going through, try not to get discouraged. If you can't do a certain lab or you can't remember how to do something, it's going to happen. It's going to happen quite often. But the more you work at it, the less frequently it's going to happen. So.
Okay, Tony has a question. Did you change strategy between your 1st, 2nd, and 3rd attempts? Now, strategy, would that be study strategy or test-taking strategy?
I was looking more for test-taking strategy.
Okay, so I guess approaching the test and different questions, stuff like that.
Yes, actually. Yeah, totally. The first time, I thought I had a strategy going into my first attempt. You always think, okay, hey, I'm going for the big show here. I got a strategy. Well, as soon as I started to open up that thing, I saw those routers, and I was like, well, there goes that strategy. And I just started completely just did not follow my strategy whatsoever. The second attempt wasn't that bad because I kind of knew what to expect, but same sort of deal. When you're under that pressure, it's really, really hard. And to me, the hardest thing was Humphrey already touched on this, but we as engineers, we're like, we get a problem, we're going to fix it. We got to fix it. And you think, okay, this is the biggest thing. I got to fix this stuff. But especially with trouble. Well, let me see. Hold on. So troubleshooting, yes, this is very important. That I didn't finally do until my third attempt and because after my second attempt, the Proctor, I talked to Proctor, David Blair at RTP, and he told me I told him I got hemmed up. He goes, you're not moving on. You have the strategy I used was 8 minutes per ticket. 8 minutes per ticket, and then if you can't get it in 8 minutes, move on. Well, I had a hard time doing that, especially my second attempt, because you have to get at least one of the 3-pointers. And I knew that. So the first 3-pointer I couldn't get. So I moved on. Second 3-pointer I couldn't get. And I sat there on that second 3-pointer until I wasted 30 minutes on it. And there we go. I just failed the test. And I told him that. I'm like, well, I know I got to get at least one of them. He's like, doesn't matter. Move on. And maybe as you're doing further on ones, you might click and oh, I know what to do now. And you go back to it and fix it. And he was exactly right, because on my third attempt, that's exactly what I did. So my third attempt, I was a little bit more prepared. I'd seen the same topology before. I'm pretty sure it was different tickets, but same topology. So that wasn't a confusion. But this time I actually followed the strategy of 8 minutes. That's one thing you can practice, is because it's very hard to time yourself under pressure when you're trying to get these things. You're not paying attention to the time, but you have to. So you get 8 minutes. I got 8 minutes, and I got the first pass through. I got, I think, let's see, 7 of the 8 2-pointers, but I didn't get any of the 3-pointers. And then my second pass around, I went back and then I got the last 2-pointer, and then so I knew I had to get at least one 3-pointer. So then I'm watching my time. I'm like, okay, now I just go back and forth. So I went to the first 3-pointer, couldn't get it. I gave it about 4 minutes. I went back to the other 3-pointer, and another 4 minutes, and I couldn't get it. I went back to the other one. I'm hoping I'm going to get one of them, and eventually I found the command that was missing, and then I see the ping go across. I gave it oh, thank you. Then I went back to double check my work, and then I found my second 2-pointer I actually thought was right, and it wasn't working. So that's when I freaked out, and I realized, holy cow, what's going on here? And then as soon as I found the problem, it cut me out. So I got that 2-pointer wrong and 3-pointer wrong, and I ended up, luckily, that was the only one. So, but yes, so that strategy is actually what saved me. So I've tried to do it the first 2, but I didn't really. But the third time I knew it was a must, and I did, and it saved me. Config strategy, yes, lots of strategy in that. Things like using Notepad. The more Notepad I used, the quicker I became. So I was pretty much doing the whole config on Notepad and then pasting it in. Speaking of Notepad and the troubleshooting, that was part of my strategy too. And the third one is, let's say if I had a frame relay problem with 3 routers. Right off the bat, I decided I'm going to go ahead and pull the configs off of each of the 3 routers, because the first 2 attempts I found myself going back and forth doing the show commands and wasting so much time. Well, what did this one say? I can't remember. What did this one say? I can't remember. So immediately I just grabbed the show commands, put them in Notepad, tweaked them, fixed what was wrong, and put them back, and I saved myself 3 or 4 minutes. So yeah, the strategies kind of evolved. I took some strategies I've read from, I think, Marco from IP Expert. He gave a lot of strategies. I think the Notepad was one of them, but that's pretty much the gist of my evolution of my strategy. The config, let's see, the first time it was just a complete blur.
Yeah.
Yeah. Both, just that whole day was just a blur. I went back in my truck to write everything down, and I couldn't really remember much of anything, but yeah, so the config, oh geez, now I'm trying to remember back.
What we could do is when we get to the config section, we'll talk about that.
There you go. Maybe you'll trigger some of my memories.
Yeah. Then Wen has a question. Okay, yeah, we sort of kind of answered this, but did you study CCIE I guess, while actually working. So you didn't have access to your lab, but you could do other things.
So I did everything I possibly could. So the first thing I did was I printed out Narberic's workbooks. They come with one printing. It's actually, I think it's two printing licenses, and it's like print all the odds and turn it over, print out the evens. That's it. That's all you get. So I printed them all out. I have these 2 huge workbooks I brought with me to work every day, and I've read those. In addition, I scoured YouTube, and there's a lot of information on YouTube between the different vendors. INE's got some good stuff on there. IP Expert's got some good stuff on there. So, there's things to do when you don't have access. There's so much on YouTube, and then INE's got great blogs. If I were to pick that's what their core competence would be their blogs on the internet. So anytime I had a question, I'd look on the internet and boom, there's INE's example or explanation of it. So there's lots of stuff I was able to do. But for the most part, I guess the one thing that really helped me out was with the printed out books. And I just use Notepad. So I practice Notepad. So I'd be at work and I'd have a task, or I'd try to think of something, and I'd try to configure it just on my Notepad because that's all I have. And if I couldn't do it, then I knew that, hey, I got to look that up. I got to remember that. That's got to be on the tip of my fingertips, because if it's not, then I'm just going to be wasting time. Oh yeah, and one last thing about that is the doc CD. So it's the doc CD. The way I approach the doc CD is if I have to access it more than once or twice, then I'm pretty much not in good shape. Because if I was going to access it, I have to get in and get out. You don't want to be surfing through there looking for what you're looking for, because if you do, you're just wasting valuable time. So that was one thing I used when I was at work, is I just browsed through the doc CD to find out what's out there, what's good information, and what's not good information. Because there are topics out there that just have terrible documentation. So if you're going to sit there and waste 5 minutes looking for this topic that you don't know where it is, and only to find out that the information does not help you whatsoever, then you just wasted that time. And then it added frustration. So knowing the doc CD, hopefully you don't have to use it, but at least knowing what's there. Little things like ether types, if you need to know where those are at. Little things that are not exactly easily found, you want to find during your studies, so you know where they are. Ether types, you got protocol numbers and whatnot. So, yeah.
Yep. Good stuff. All right, next section here. Let's do this. All right. So once you decide to go for CCIE, like you said, okay, I'm doing this, you've talked to your family, then that's it. You have to be unstoppable. There is no quitting. You're in, right? It's not something you do half-ass. So, there are people out there, we talk about them in our study group where, they take it 5-6 times and they say, I failed 6 times. I'm done. Right. Not going to take it again. It's like, dude, you took it 6 times already. What's number 7? It's like you're already in for 6. So you might as well go all the way. I was talking with John after he passed. So I took my last attempt May 31st. I stayed in RTP and picked him up at the airport Sunday night. So I took it Saturday, I picked him up Sunday night, and we split the hotel room in the car to make it cheaper for him. And just so that he also has okay, well, Humphrey took it before me, he's hanging out, and it was kind of like we're in this together type thing. And after he took his test, we're talking, and, what if you fail, what if you pass type thing. And he's like, well, just think of CCIE as like a $15,000 apprenticeship. Right? So if you add in the boot camp and the temps and the hotels and the airfare, it's probably going to be somewhere 15 to 20, let's say, right? If you passed on the first time, it's going to be a hell of a lot cheaper, but we'll say 15 to 20. You're going to be learning so much stuff that you don't want to learn. Like I got dragged kicking and screaming into IPv6, at first, don't want to learn it. Don't want to learn multicast. Why? I don't do it at work. But CCIE forces you to learn that stuff. Right? So now, looking back, compare myself versus my first attempt. I can apply for jobs that I never would have, couldn't even think of, if it was before my first attempt. But now, even though I'm not CCIE, I can apply for them because I've labbed them up so much. It's like, oh, multicast troubleshooting? Okay, pim sparse, pim sparse this, whatever, do the RPs, do all this stuff, right? It's like automatic, commander data robot thing, But, and if you get the cert after doing all your attempts, that's great too. That's icing on the cake. But, just think of it as an apprenticeship. You're learning all this stuff. Yes, you're paying Cisco for the privilege, but it's like they're forcing you to learn this. They're forcing you to learn topics that you would not normally learn. Right? And accept a few simple truths. It's not a best practice test. It's not a real-world test. You hear this over and over and over, but when you look at that troubleshooting and when you look at that config, you'll be looking through the questions and you'll go, I would never do this. Or, why would I want evens and odds here? This makes no sense.
That's a fact.
or why would I do control plane policing when this is going to block everything, type stuff.
Yeah, why can't I remove it?
Yeah. Yeah. Zone-based firewall. Why don't I buy Palo Alto? It's like, why am I doing this with a router? So definitely it's not a real-world test. Not a real-world test. Tunnels. Oh, good example. Usually you do tunnels to a loopback, right? Or maybe they don't want you to do it to a loopback. Maybe they want you to do it to interface. And you go, what? And an interface that's in maybe a different routing protocol, something like that. So we already talked about it's going to take you way out of your comfort zone. Some people don't like that, but if you're the type of person that everything has to be exactly right, you have to have 3 sugars and 3 milk creams in your coffee, and that's it. This is not the test for you. There is no best way or best path to study. Everyone's different. So the most common email I get about CCIE is, what's the best workbook to buy? What's the best way to study? There is none. I like Narvik, but maybe you're different. Maybe you don't like Narvik. Some people like INE. Other people like IP Expert. Some people, they like to study with music. Other people like to study. They have to have earplugs, right? Other people need YouTube playing in the background. It's all different. Everyone, you plan this out and you think it's going to be a straight shot, but there's detours and U-turns and all types of stuff that's thrown at you. So, Kenneth, OCD will suffer. Yes, OCD will. Yeah, if you have OCD, yeah. But in some ways, it could work out for you. It may take several times to pass. It probably will take several times to pass. I talked to the proctor in San Jose, and I was like, "Hey, what's the deal here? What's the average?" They won't tell you officially, but unofficially, right now it's 7. That's unofficial, right? Before, you probably heard the number between 3 and 4. That was earlier. They're making this harder, so this number goes up. I think David Blair told me that the record is something like 33 or something like that. Another proctor at my mobile lab, Fabian, really good guy, 6-time CCIE. He told me he has seen people 12 or 13 times. That's dedication. That's hardcore. And if, as I said it before, if you say you must pass on your first attempt, that's just setting yourself up for failure. Not saying it doesn't happen. There are people that pass on the first attempt, but it probably won't happen. But yeah. I mean, look at me. I run RouterGods. I make the training videos. Went to Narvik's boot camp. Did INE. All the workbooks of INE multiple times. So I went through Narvik's workbook multiple times. Had the Cisco 360 practice labs. Did all 35 of them multiple times, and first time was just as horrible, if not worse, than Tim's. It was basically
I don't know. Mine was pretty bad.
That was a WTF mode. I couldn't get a single ticket for 45 minutes. I was just like, what? I can't do RIP? Like, it wasn't RIP, but it was something similar. But am I that bad? Type thing. So just realize, set up a fund, let's say, and say, okay, this 15,000, is for CCIE. That's like my investment into learning, and I will never see this again. And if you pass on the first or second time, hey, you got spending money. But don't be one of these guys. You have to pass on the first time. All right, Tim, all yours.
Okay, let's see here. Where are we at? Sorry.
I have it highlighted up here.
Okay. Yeah. So, we've already talked about, once you get started, you just got to keep going. But one thing that you could consider this whole thing is this is probably the only test or certification or whatever that when you fail, it's not looked down upon. It's almost like, hey, you're part of us now. And you fail multiple times, and then you pass. You went through the gauntlet. So it's almost like a rite of passage. So as you're going through these things, and if you pass the first time, awesome, hey, great. But if you didn't, then just keep on going. I wouldn't say expect to fail, because you never want to go into it expecting to fail, because if you are, then you probably shouldn't be taking the test. But if you don't make it, then you immediately write the stuff down as soon as you get back in your vehicle, and what you remember, the things they ask you, and go back and look it up. Why didn't I know that? What are they looking for? So it's a rite of passage. $15,000 seems like a lot of money, but in the grand scheme of things, it's not really. It's what's a lot is the time that you're going to sacrifice putting for it. You're going to make the money back. So you just have to be prepared to give up the time, and if you're willing to do that, and you're willing to take the punches, and get down there and fight dirty, with your routers or whatever, then that's what you should do. Let's see here. Everyone is different. No best path or way to study. I hear that's what's hard to answer that question when somebody says about strategy. I have my strategy, and it kind of developed over time, but I can't say it'll work for everyone. There are some generalized strategy things, but it's just something you have to develop amongst yourself as you're going through the process. Really, no one can tell you what exactly you're going to feel as you go into the test. They could just only tell you so much. You just have to experience it, and that's one of the main reasons why a lot of people fail it the first time. So it's just so much to grasp. Let's see here. Yeah, and most definitely not a best practice test. Holy cow. Just so many times I'm like, why, really? Are you serious? I can't do it this way, this way, this way, or this way. So what do they say? If there's 3 ways to do it, you better know how to do all 4, right? Yeah. So...
Yeah, that's the thing, the restrictions, right? You may know how to do a particular technology, but the restriction is blocking the usual way that you usually do it. Right? Or, it's also a reading comprehension test.
Yeah, actually, very much so. And that's one of the things that you really should, as you're going through, and you kind of gauge yourself, where am I at? Well, what they're going to do is they're going to ask you something that it might be a very vague question. It might seem like a vague question, but if you have to look at the words and how they say it, and you have to understand the technology and what they're wanting to pull from you. They might throw a word in there that is typically used for a certain protocol, but what they're looking for is another protocol, and that particular word might be actually used in both protocols. So it might be a distractor. So you kind of have to understand, well, holy cow, this protocol over here uses this protocol, but it also needs this, which is what they're asking for. So don't get sucked into, distractors or whatever. You have to really read into it. For instance, BPU guard, BPU filter, interface mode versus global mode. You got to understand exactly what those do, because they will ask you very certain ways of what they're looking for. And if you put the wrong one, the same thing with root guard or BPU filter. Very similar things the functions that they do, but it's in what they interact with, and if the question doesn't say anything about root, then maybe they're looking for BPU filter. But if it actually says, root, then that's what they're looking for. So it's very wordy, and That's the part that's very difficult. You just trying to figure out what they're wanting. That was the hardest thing for me.
Yeah, it's like, what do you want from me?
Yeah.
Cool. And also, good point on the Cisco fake out. Sometimes you're reading, let's say through troubleshooting, and you see something like deny in the access list, and you go, aha, that must be it. Look out. It could actually be the correct thing, and you go blasting out that line in the access list, and you're done.
Yep, and here's another great example. If this is a great example of when they say you should understand the technologies completely, this is what they're talking about. Because, so let's say if you get, let's say it's a multicast ticket, and it spans across a bunch of routers, and whether it's a 2-pointer, 3-pointer, doesn't matter. It could be either or. And you've noticed in your troubleshooting, you're looking at the configs, and you're like, oh, this one's sparse mode. Oh, this one's sparse dense mode. Oh, that must be a problem. And if you don't know for sure whether those interact or not, you might lose time. So, if you knew beforehand that, I could leave those alone, that's not the problem, then you won't get sucked into doing that. So little things like that. That's one thing when you're on your own labs, you're working on your workbook labs, that's fine. But in addition to that, you should build your own labs and build them all funky. Like, will this ever work? I'm not sure. Let me go ahead and do that. Let me see if I can get it to work. And if you can't get it to work, hey, maybe ask one of your study partners, hey, can you guys get this to work? What's going on here? And then try to understand what's going on in the background. And once you get to that point, then those little things that tend to be time sucks aren't anymore, because you understand, hey, I know how that works. I know what's going on in the background. That's fine over there. What's going on is this over here. I'm looking in the wrong spot. So,
good point. All right, continue on. Habituation. What you want to do is you want to lab so much that difficult and scary tasks become easy or easier. When you first do them, you're probably like, dude, I have no idea how to configure, let's say, DMVPN, let's say. Right? You practice, and eventually it's like, oh, okay, not a big deal. And when we say 1,000 to 2,000 hours of practice, we're talking focused labbing, not labbing while you're playing a game on the side. It's like your head is down, you're just cranking out configs, and you're 100% in the zone. Right? You got to become used to unknown and crazy stuff. That way in the lab, you're like, okay, I'm used to crazy stuff. Just throw something crazy at me, not a big deal. And in the final stages, let's say in the week or two before your lab, some people like keeping the study environment exactly the same. So what we mean by that is, okay, the lab's going to be 8 hours. Lab at home for 8 hours. See if you can last that long. The lab's going to have a 24-inch screen, a single one. Yeah, I know. Cisco can't afford 2 screens. I'm used. And for a person who likes 3 screens to go down to a single screen, that's painful. I type on the Dvorak keyboard. For those of you who know, that's a different keyboard layout. Cisco won't let you type on the Dvorak keyboard. I asked. You have to have a doctor's note, actual doctor's note. I don't know what the doctor's note would be for. If he types on QWERTY, his hands will fall out. I don't know why, but they said if you bring in a doctor's note, we will give you we will change to Dvorak, whatever. The putties is stay on top, right? Some of you may not be used to that. The copy and paste in putty, it requires a confirmation. Some of you are used to the right click and the paste in there. Right? There's a couple other things. In one of my attempts in San Jose, a lady from Argentina came in. She brought her own keyboard. That was kind of funny. The proctor just kind of looked at it. What are you going to do with that keyboard? Well, I'm going to use it. No, you're not. Put it back in the car. Quit your job or not. There's case for. So some people like to quit their job and study. So they say, well, it's going to take a long time, a lot of hours to study. I'll quit my job and go 100%. Right? So there's cases for and against. I've seen success and I've seen failure. Right? So we have a person in the group. He's shy, so I don't want to announce anything. But he passed recently. He freaking quit his job. He went all in, right? It took him, how many tries did it? 3? I think it's 3. I think he did 3 tries, but he passed. And now he got a job. So that's the case 4. You know, I don't think he's married, so you know he's doesn't have a lot of expenses. So if your finances are decent, you have support, that could work. Case against, you're on the edge on finances. You don't want to bankrupt yourself doing this. Narvik says this during his boot camp. Don't bankrupt yourself. Don't lose your family. Don't lose your friends. Narvik is basically says, okay, if you can't do crazy 8 hours a day, do 3 hours a day. And just continuous burn throughout the year, right? So there's case for and against. Now what I did is I did this weird thing where I would quit my job, study in like 2 or 3 month spurts in Thailand, come back because I ran out of money, get a contract job, work, but stop studying, and rinse and repeat. That's really tough because when you take a break and you go back to studying, you're like, well, this BGP section, what's this confederation you're talking about here? So, it's bad because you have to play catch up. When do I take the written? So I did it wrong. I've taken the written
so did I.
Twice. And just so I get the written out of the way, yippee! But the clock is ticking and it expired, so I had to take it again. And on the first day, Narvik asked for student introductions. It's like, well, a lot of people say, well, my written's about to expire, so I scheduled my lab, and he basically says, so you're going to spend $1,500 because your $350 written is about to expire. Good job. Yes.
That was me. But I did have a little excuse. My GI Bill pays for it, but
there you go.
That does in the long run comes out of my but it wasn't cash right now. So his point was made.
Yeah. And Roger Oliver says, I've taken the written 6 times. Well, there you go. Yeah, but you're very good with the written now. So, okay, cool. For this section, habituation, quit your job, or when do I take the written? Tim, take it away.
Okay, so yeah, the whole quit the job thing. So it's not like the CCIE journey isn't stressful enough as it is. Unless you've got a job that just completely prevents it and you're financially set. I mean, I suppose anything's possible, but if you can not give any extra stress on yourself or any kind of I've only got money to last me for X amount of time before I have to pass this and I have to if you're already in this thing and you're given 100%, that extra bit of incentive might not be productive. So I don't know, that'd be quite risky in my opinion. And yeah, Narvik did say what he suggested was, wait until you're ready to take the lab, then take the written. And I completely agree. I did the same thing most everyone does. I as soon as I got done with T-Shoot and I got CCNP and I decided, I'm going to do CCIE. So I went ahead and took the written. That was my first step. Well, then that put me on an 18-month timeline. And, of course, going into it, I'm like, well, 18 months, yeah, I've heard you could lock yourself in the basement for 6 months and you can get it. Yeah, well, that's didn't exactly how it worked. So at the 17-and-a-half-month mark, I went ahead and took my first attempt. And I thought I was ready, but then I was quickly schooled by Cisco. So would I have taken it if I wasn't on the timeline? Probably not. So yeah, I probably would have. Oh yeah, good one. How do you handle health fitness? Yeah. So that was another thing I was going to mention. I guess you got to balance it. But obviously your priority is going to be this. But one thing I wanted to mention, not necessarily fitness related, but more of health related, is one thing I experienced pretty hard was lower back pain. Pain in my legs and my rear end was from sitting there for 10 hours a day. And I had to force myself to get up. But when you're in the zone, you don't want to get up because you get up and it's like, it's around the tip of my fingertips. It's like, let's go. Well, you have to because it really will take a toll on you. You can start gaining weight or whatever. But just that pain in my lower my mid to lower region was just sometimes excruciating, and it was pretty bad. That's a lot of hours just sitting there labbing, and so yeah.
Yeah, and then 2 o'clock in the morning, what I would experience is like the screen would start getting blurry.
Yes.
Your eyes just
double vision.
Yeah, you can't focus, and it's like, dude, like it's like you have diabetes or something. But that's really, really scary, and yeah, you don't want to get up. You're labbing. You're in the zone. You're doing crazy OSPF stuff, and you're like, let's do it.
So what did I do? When I started hurting, I'd have to get up. I'd pop a Motrin and just try to remember, okay, I got to get up more often. And then my wife would help me, she'd remind me, you need to get up now. All right, I'd get up and stretch out and walk around a little bit. Sometimes it helped to go for a run. That helps loosen things up and everything, and helps clear the mind too. So, it's alarm to forced working out. Yeah, good idea. There you go. It's a good strategy.
Yeah, I had a perfect push-up, like, right next to the desk, and it's like, okay, do 10 or do 20.
Yeah.
Do a section and continue on. Okay, so let's see here. You passed the written, now what? Let's say you schedule a lab. What are you looking at? Well, RTP offers weekend testing, so if you're one of those guys where you can't take a weekday off, then you can go to RTP. The problem with RTP is if you're from the West Coast, the time zone change will kill you. I experienced this in Miami. I arrived in Miami the day before my attempt. I'm from California. That's 3 time zones, or 3 hours difference, and that did not go over too well. The first hour, so your brain has to be 100%, but your brain is just not even woken up yet. So I was basically saying, okay, brain, I know what I need to do, but you need to work. And brain said, nope, not happening. So that's bad. If you have other friends that are going for CCIE, there's nothing preventing you guys from taking the lab all on the same day. Share the room, share the hotel cost, make it at least less painful than what it is. And for some people, plunking down the money, paying for the lab date, well, for most people, I would say, serves as a motivator. This shit does not get real until you plunk down the money. Especially if you plunk down the money before the 90 days and you can't get the money back. It's
right.
It's done. Like you're in. If you do it before the 90 days, you can move it around without penalty. But yeah, I mean, some people need to plunk down the money and say, okay, well, the money's there. I really got to study now, type thing. Once you pay Cisco, you're going to study like never before. We'll talk about the phases of study, but basically, you thought you studied a lot before. Once you put down the money, it's worse. Practice labs, it could be I&E, could be IP Expert. We did a lot of the Cisco 360 labs. Pretty decent. I mean, there's a lot of them. The wording is pretty close. Topology is different every time, and the IP addresses they use is mind-boggling sometimes. But they're decent practice labs. Environmental factors. If you want the keyboard the same, it's a Logitech K120. Although, well, I practice on a laptop, and it's a difference when you practice on a laptop and you go to the lab. Fingers are trying to go different ways, and you have a lot of mistakes. We already talked about the monitor and the putty on top. My last week before the lab on my last attempt, I'll tell you what I did. I locked myself in a hotel room. I got there 7 days early to adjust, and I was doing 3 to 4 practice labs a day in that hotel room. I would lab up. I would go to McDonald's, get myself an Egg McMuffin, come back, lab up, do 1 or 2 labs, then I'd go out and get Bojangles fried chicken, come back to the hotel room, and I was stuck in that hotel room. I was labbing 12 hours, I forget, but my fingers started hurting after that. But that's what I was prepared to do to pass on that last attempt. But other people do similar. This strategy is actually what both Narvik and the Bryans recommend at I&E. Get there a week early. do practice lab, like 2 practice labs every day, and then on lab day it's a practice lab. Just think of it as a practice lab, a rack rental, right? Like you basically want it to be not a big deal, although it's the 4th time I kind of felt that way, but the first time is like you walk in that room and you think the balloons are going to fall down because it's Humphrey's first attempt, and the drum corps is playing or whatever. But the first attempt is really, really scary. But as you take this attempt more and more, the stress goes down. All right, so this section right here.
All right, yeah, so totally agree with all that. The one other thing I want to add with as far as the practice labs, one thing I would recommend is try to acquire as many different ones as you can. And that's one thing that Humphrey and I liked about the Cisco 360s. There were so many of them. I think it was, 36 of them? So that's 36 individual labs that that you can work on. And the reason why I say that is because what you don't want is to keep doing the same labs over and over again, and then you're getting good at that lab, but yet it's a false sense of ability maybe where you remember that particular portion, but you just keep doing it over and over again. So it's do you really understand it, or you just know that one? So that's one thing. That's what I liked about working with Humphrey on those 360 labs. Yeah, ditto on the keyboard. Practicing for my first attempt was on a laptop, an old T61, little tiny 15-inch. I had that. The keys are like, they're worn down. I worked on it so much. So going into the first one, I get this Logitech keyboard. Just one thing you just don't want to happen is you're typing, and you're so used to typing on a little laptop keyboard, and all of a sudden now you can't type because your fingers are used to a different size keyboard. So it sounds small, it sounds minute, but it is really important. You should at least get a full-size keyboard the way it's going to be, and keep your fingers used to, because you're going to be typing fast. You're going to be stressed out. You're going to want to go fast, and if you've got a different size keyboard practicing on, you're not going to be able to go fast. ID memory's a bitch. Oh yeah, so that makes me remember one particular thing. One of the previous topics talk about habituation. You also want to, as you're going through your practices, you want to be very careful at using the same thing over and over again, such as router OSPF 1. So, okay, if you're using router EIGRP 1, the test calls for EIGRP 10, you do 1, and then you do 10, it'll, hey, whatever. But router OSPF 1, you have router OSPF 2, router OSPF, whatever they ask for, and you're used to doing 1, you're going to have 1 and 1, 2 and another 1, they're not going to link, or you have 2 routing processes on the same router, and one of the restrictions, because they know you're going to do that, is only have 1 router process, so you're going to lose major points for that. So my point is, the habits that you're in, the EIGRP no auto, the things that you do all the time, every time, are the things they might actually kind of want to get you on. So they want to see if you're paying attention, and so if you can change it up a little bit and take that habituation and kind of get out of that comfort zone a little bit, and so anyways, that was on a previous topic. I just want to bring that up. So
yeah, that's good. If you're used to /24s.
Yes.
Yeah. Might not get /24s. If you're used to 10.1.1.1, stuff like that. Okay. Phases of study here. Okay, so this is kind of a rough thing. Like when you start studying, at first you're going to start pretty slow. You got your workbooks. You're curious. You're like, okay, I've never done this before. It's still, you're going to have a life still. It's still going to be kind of fun because you're like, oh, well, I've never done DMVPN. And you're probably still not 100% sure you're going to take the lab. It's like, okay, I've plunked down for the workbooks. Let's see if I'm CCIE material type. And this was kind of how I was when I bought INE's materials. Like, okay, I'll look through the videos. I'll go through the workbooks, but I'm still... you talk to a lot of your friends, and they're like, "Oh yeah, I'm studying for CCIE," It's like, dude, you've been studying for CCIE for the last 3 years. That book has never moved off your desk, type thing. Versus someone who's gone to the lab or someone who's at least plunked down money for the lab. It's a different story. Your next phase is, okay, you're a little bit more serious. You increase your studying, a couple more hours a day maybe. Your free time is dwindling, but it's still not too bad. It's just, and maybe you're still not 100% sure, but the mad dash happens when you plunk down your $1,500 because now you have something to lose, a big chunk of money to lose. And that's the point where you're labbing every night until your fingers hurt, screen gets blurry, and that's when you really need to talk to your family or talk to your friends and say, okay, in this phase, I'm out of, basically out of here. And you probably saw that with RouterGods. I used to do meetups, like 2 times a week. And for the last how many months, haven't done any meetups. This is like the first meetup I've done in like God knows how long. And that's because I was studying. Like I shut out the whole world. Yeah, that was it, was labbing. Trying to keep your sanity during this because it can get overwhelming. Tim was talking about, well, you got this pile of workbooks in front of you. And, the first day of Narbix boot camp, he chucks like, was it like 6 workbooks in front of you?
Yeah, it was 6.
It's like 1.5 feet high of workbooks. I mean, it's crazy. And then he gives you a pad of paper too, and you'll fill that up and another pad of paper. So it can get overwhelming. No doubt about it. Some days you're going to lab and you're going to be like, I'm on it today. I'm kicking ass. And then the next day on a practice lab, let's say practice lab 31 in the Cisco 360 workbook, you're like, dude, I can't even get out of frame relay. What the hell? And it's probably because they said, well, keep inverse ARP on there. You're like, what? I've never done that. What are you talking about? Stuff like that. To keep your sanity, have a cheat day. Say, okay, well, if you don't want to take an entire day off, you could say, okay, on Sunday, I have a nice lunch with family, and then I'll lab or I'll just read the rest of the day. Something like that. If you don't want to just say Sunday, do nothing type deal. And you're going to have burnout. I experienced this many times where I'm just like, I don't want to lab today. It's just, what do you do? Well, you could power through it, but if your mind really isn't into labbing, it could be counterproductive to actually lab if you're just like, screw it, type thing. But you're going to experience burnout. Sometimes, take a walk, watch a movie. YouTube, I recommend against it because YouTube is the great sink of productivity. Once you get on YouTube, you're gone for like 2 hours. And we've had that a couple times in our study group. Is once Humphrey starts going on YouTube, Humphrey's gone. Dancing girls on cars type thing. Well, we'll just ignore Humphrey now. But these type of things are normal. Don't think like shit. Like I hear this all the time. Like maybe I'm not smart enough. Maybe CCIE is like it's too tough for me. No. You can do it because in the boot camp, if you look around the boot camp, there's other people. You're probably just as smart as them, and if they can do it, you can do it. Yeah. All right. That section right there.
Okay. Let's see, Paul. Paul says, one thing that I feel is that you do not know what kind of day you're going to have at the lab, so you may have to lab through feeling sick, not feeling it, having a bad topics. You need to become a robot. That's exactly true. And that was one of the things that I considered part of the luck thing. I just paid real close attention the week prior. I'm like, okay, what am I touching with my hands? Let me wash my hands a lot. I don't want to get sick or whatever for that reason. But some things you just can't control. And yeah, you're going to just have to punch through it. As a matter of fact, my second attempt, I was sick. But I wasn't terribly sick. And when you get in there, I didn't care. I didn't even think about it. And I just started going. But yeah, you can become really sick, and that could be a drag. So let's see here. Yeah, the definite good breakdown there. And that breakdown corresponds with my purchasing of equipment. let's see, at my curiosity stage, I had 2 routers and a switch, I think. No, 3 routers and 2 switches. That was my baseline. That was my little thing. I was like, all right, maybe I could do some things in here, make it work. And then I spent more time trying to make the labs work with that than I was actually doing labs. Then I built it up a little bit more, and then my slow burn started. And, by now my family's starting to feel it and everything, but I just got to do it in the mad dash. So I'm fortunate enough to where the current job I'm at, I was able to take a month off before, well, I think it was 3 weeks before the first attempt, a month before the second, and then 2 weeks before the third. It's just I burned up all my vacation, but at least I was able to do it. I was fortunate in that, so I guess that was part of the luck. And yeah, so that's when it gets pretty stressful. And by that point, I had already purchased the full lab. I was on eBay, and I had my full rack to where I could run either 360, Narvik, or INE, or whatever it was. And that really helped a lot. Even though you can do a lot of it virtually, and now with V5, that might not be so much of an issue. But with me, it was really important to have that lab, and it really corresponds with those 3 little sections right there. Humphrey pointed out. Yeah, I think we pretty much hit the feeling overwhelmed. That's what's going to happen. So you just got to manage that. And there's really no better way to. I just can't really explain what would work for everyone. It's just do your best to manage it, and you're going to get overwhelmed. You're going to get stressed. You're going to want to quit. But every time you think about that, all I did for me was just think about all the stress I've already went through, and do I want to throw that away? And I didn't want to do that. So it immediately got me right back focused, and I think that's what helped out a lot.
Yep. And by the way, for the others of you guys, if you want lab equipment, now everyone's offloading their V4 rack. So if you want real gear, it's all on eBay, $60 for 1841s.
Yep. Sorry, mine's already sold.
3560s are basically like $50 now. So that's with the EMI image. So it's crazy.
Actually, I went ahead and sold mine 2 days prior to my third attempt. I rolled the dice on that one. I didn't want to get stuck with it.
I'm committed. I'm passing F the rap. That's one way to do it. Okay, study materials. We already talked about this. There's no magic vendor. Most people use multiple materials. Tim and I were both INE refugees. I'm not saying bad things about INE. We start with INE, and then we went Narvik. Some people do IP Expert, then Narvik. Some people, you can pass with just INE or just Narvik. People do it all the time. But what I'm seeing, whenever I talk to everyone, most people use multiple vendors. And they just want a different way of looking at things. For the practice labs, every vendor has their own practice lab, but I found that the Cisco 360 practice labs are probably the most accurate. INE practice labs, the topology, they use a little different topology, and that got me on my first attempt. I was like, wait a second, what is this F010 business here on the switches? But it's a little different, and in the lab, if it's a little different, it's gonna mess you up. Not much to say about study materials. On that, and yes, it does get expensive, but if you want to make the pain a little bit less, you can buy one workbook at a time. That's one way to do it. Boot camps and study groups, people have definitely passed without going to a boot camp, but I think they're useful because you're gonna make friends. It's more than just the workbooks or the videos. You're gonna make friends and study partners. They become like almost your second family because you're all going through the same misery, the same crap. You're all studying, and you're gonna get tips from each other. Hopefully not exact questions, but it's like, okay, well, you can kind of quiz each other. Hey, teach me MPLS, or teach me RIP, or can I do it this way or that way? The cool thing about Narvik's bootcamp is you have that assessment test. You take it, and you can say, well, I got 70 on the assessment test. That's pretty good, Or if you got 20 on the assessment test, maybe, maybe you should evaluate things. There's also the crazy thing that you do on Thursday, where he lectures you all day on Thursday, and then you take the troubleshooting and config assessment test, basically test number 2, and then you lab all the way until after nice pizza, from Papa John's, and then you lab all the way until 4 a.m. if you can make it till 4. I think I tapped out at 2:30. But this lady here from the Philippines, she was a trooper. She lasted all the way through, and I think she slept in class, and she was like the first one in, like one of the first people in the next morning. Yep. And I was dragging myself in. That sucked. But you get used to labbing while you're tired. You make stupid mistakes when you're tired. You just have to get used to it. Study groups like the one Josh is running right now, you got to be with like-minded, but probably more importantly, motivated people. You make a pact with each other. It's like, okay, we're all going, for CCIE. You don't want that guy in there is like, maybe I'll go, maybe I won't. It's like, no, we're all going. Supportive environment. Hold each other accountable. I mean, if I know John did that with me a lot. It's like, it's 1 a.m. I'm like, I've had enough. I'm going to bed. And he's like, no, we're going till 2. It's like, oh, fine, okay, type thing. Or I'll get off track, like I do a lot, and so I'll start surfing YouTube. And he's like, dude, come on, man. Okay, I'll watch one video with you. But then you need someone to kind of smack you in the face and get you back. For the D-Day stuff that we were doing, it was like Martin, John, Tim, and I, and a couple others. Dude, we're all labbing 2 a.m. in the morning. Martin was waking up at 4:30. He's in Germany. Yeah. He's waking up at 4:30 in the morning in Germany to lab with us. Right? That's dedication. That's what you got to do. If you're trying to do this alone, you can do it, but it's rough. It's rough. And it's not to say that our study groups, like you're only labbing with your study group. No, you're probably labbing just as much away from the study group. It's like, I know, like Martin, he would stop labbing with us, and then do his thing. He'd take his kids to school or whatever, and then he'd come back and he'd lab on his own. It's like, okay, I'll finish this lab later, type thing. So study groups are a great thing. I know if you're on the Cisco Learning Network, there's a discussion about, there's this one guy that says, study groups suck. I'll do it all alone. It's like, well, okay, fine. If that's your thing, that's cool. He was under the opinion that if you get stuck, you just ask on a forum. But it's like, okay, how many forums do you know where you get the answer right away? Not many in the CCIE world, right?
Or if you get an answer, you'll get an answer that comes with a counter answer to an argument. Next thing you know, you've got everything blown up between two guys sitting there trying to decipher which one's right. Yeah. It becomes CCIE forums and mailing lists are sometimes very horrible because it becomes a big who's is bigger type thing. Group list. Yeah. Oh yeah. Sometimes on group list, I'm just like, okay, here it comes. It's more entertaining than not, learning. Yeah. It's like you just sit back with the popcorn, crack open a beer, watch it go. Yeah. All right. So study materials in boot camp. Yeah, totally. 100% agree with everything you just said. Let's see, nothing else to add on the study materials. You covered that pretty good. And the boot camps. I started off with Narberg's 5-day course in, what year was that? 2012, I think it was. And that kind of opened my eyes. And then that's when I met some of my first study partners that I still study with today. And then the following, that was in August, I think. The following March 2013 is when I went to California and I met Humphrey and became good friends with half that class. And then the following August 2013, Narberg came back to Virginia, and I reattended that 5-day class. That was free, of course, just to kind of piece it all together. And there you go. And so that helped tremendously. I mean, I don't want to sound like I'm putting a plug in, but one huge help for me was the fact that Narvik was always there for me if I ever had any questions. He offered to go instantly on Skype if he was available at that given time. And if he wasn't, he'd always get back with me later, and the answer would always be correct, and it would be very concise. I'm not trying to plug him or anything, but that's my experience. So I'm just sharing that. Because he's the only boot camp I went to. So let's see here. Study groups. Yeah, actually, I kind of it reminded me exactly of having a workout partner. If you work out or if you are a fitness buff or whatever, sometimes it's hard to go to the gym that day. You just don't feel like it, but you got your buddy that's over here like, come on, man, let's go, we're going. And sometimes that's all it takes. Like, all right, fine. But without that, you wouldn't have gone. And that might become pretty habitual. But with that friend that kind of pulls you along, come on, let's go, and then you go, and then you do the same thing for him, and that's the same kind of thing that Humphrey was just talking about. So that's okay. There we go. Paul said the same thing as Brian McGahan is the same way. So there you go. Cool. So to me, it's exactly like working out. I mean, you just got to have that little motivation, and someone that's just as motivated as you, that's right in the same frame of mind as you. It just really helps.
Yep. And let's see. Mike has a question. Which one is better, rack rental or buy equipment? I think either way is fine. The problem I had with the rack rentals, I spent maybe $400 on rack rentals. I know a guy who passed recently. He just did all rack rentals. He plunked down like $2,000 on rack rentals, which is fine. When I rented racks, my problem was that when you buy 4 hours, you don't get 4 hours, you get 3.5. So that was kind of messed up. The scheduling sometimes trying to the rack numbers are changing because that's the only one open. So I'd be on rack 5 for 4 hours, and then I'd be on rack 6. So you can't really do a full lab, in that time. Some people need the equipment by them. If you have the equipment by you, you could figure out how to make it accessible from the internet. That's cool. That's viable. But some people just maybe they don't have a space, they're in an apartment or whatever, and then they have to do rack rentals. If you have gear, if you play with gear at work, then you probably don't want to look at gear at home. That's just my feeling. But it depends. I wouldn't say that one is better than the other. I think they're equivalent. What do you think, Tim?
Well, they both have their ups and downs. I mean, obviously, if you do the rack rentals, you don't have the stress of selling it or whatever. What are you going to do after it? You're going to keep it forever or whatnot. But then again, you could use it whenever you want. But your power bill goes sky high. For rack rentals, I didn't do any rack rentals for RNS, but I'm going to have to for DC. So I'll have a better understanding of what rack rentals are all about. But I'm kind of nervous about it because you only have so many that you buy, and then if you need more, you got to buy more. And so I was pretty happy with my physical lab. I was fortunate that I was able to piece it all together. I probably wouldn't piece it together again, by the way. I'd probably just buy it in one big chunk because that was a lot of hidden costs between the cables and modules and memory and whatnot. So, anyways.
Yeah, yep. And John, who passed, he had his own rack. So, maybe he did do a couple rentals for troubleshooting, but that's about it. Okay, Cisco combo breakers. Cisco plays dirty. They will do everything. Some people think because you pay $1,500, Cisco is going to be nice to you or have some pity. There's no pity here. They will do everything in their power to make you fail. But as we said, you're used to doing router BGP 100/24 masts, stuff like that. Cisco knows this. They're going to throw something, to mess you up, and things will be like flipping configs, which means router 1 has you must make all of this even. Router 2, all of this has to be odd, right? Stuff like that. You're going to have black sheep configs. What I mean by that is you're going to make like a policy map or whatever, and these three things are going to be permit, permit, permit. And the last thing is a deny. You're like, huh? Or they'll throw the deny in the center. So they don't want you on autopilot. They want you to be thinking on your toes all the time. the best way to get used to these combo breakers is just you're labbing crazy scenarios, and be very careful when on a practice lab if they have a lot of pre-configuration and you're like, dude, this section's easy. Like that's when it gets really scary, because like those Cisco 360 labs, we're like, wow, all the frame relay is already done for us. That's pretty nice. Then nope. It's like, here it comes. You just wait for it. It'll probably be an OSPF where they hit you, because they'll say, don't change anything in frame relay to get this to work. And like, what? type thing. But yeah, and they'll just have weird stuff where you're on autopilot, and you type in that router OSPF1, and there's that line in the config basically saying, make sure there are no other OSPF processes, or make sure that OSPF 99 is the only one, right? And you have that one line in there that says router OSPF1. You've lost the points for OSPF because of that stupid thing. Also, verification. You've done like IP OSPF 255 on one side to make that the DR, right? IP OSPF 0 on the other side. And so you've done this 100 times, and you know that after you type that, R1 is going to be the DR. You know this, right? And they say ensure that R1 is the DR. And you just, you click close the lab, and, WR, close the lab, and no. You got to do that show IP OSPF neighbor command to make sure, right? If they say, like, these VLANs need to be on this, yeah, I typed the VLANs in. I know, right? No. Show VLAN brief, make sure it's that way, because who knows? Maybe you typed something later that changed all that. Okay. Kind of jives with what you've seen, Tim, where just they throw in that wrench to kind of stop you in your tracks and go, whoa.
Yeah, completely. And then also in that, one thing that hasn't been mentioned yet is they've purposely designed their tasks to kind of lead you here, and then slap you across the face. So if you don't see that coming, that you're going to lose a lot of points. They could have you do something that's going to break something you did earlier, and you have to keep in your mind what you did earlier. And if remember that ACL that you put, and that ACL is going to block what you're trying to configure now, and that you have to go open that up, and you can't remove the ACL, you just got to permit that particular protocol or whatnot. So little things like that. Be very cognizant of that, because they love to do that.
Yep. Although they've changed the wording, I noticed that on this past attempt, they've added lines to the config tasks, and they say, be careful of VLANs that you may add later. I was like, I don't remember them saying that on the first attempt. They're being nice, Whereas their first two attempts, it's like, oh, we're not telling you crap. You just have to remember. Yeah. So
that's true. I remember the same thing. Yep.
It's like, oh wow, that's nice. All right, let's see here. Oh, the lobby. Yeah. How are you going to feel in the lobby? It's a really quiet lobby when you walk in. Some people at RTP, there's a stairway going up. Some people are sitting down in the stairway with like their face in their hands. Most people are like sitting in those kind of sofa chair type things. Just realize that everyone in that room, in that lobby, is probably the best guy at their network. At their company, they're number one or maybe number two, but they're probably network badasses, and you're in a room with network badasses. So that in itself is pretty special. David Blair told me, he's proctor at RTP. He's like, when you go in this room, you have to think that you are the biggest, baddest, fastest network guy, like ever. You're going to fight for every ticket and every point. When you're in there, if you go in thinking, "Oh, I'm going to fail this test," well, you're probably, you definitely will fail there. So, the hell? It sounded like someone crashed into a house or something. That's weird. Okay, the lab venues. San Jose is kind of dreary. It's a dungeon, no windows. RTP, at least you have sunshine. got the Wall of Honor, which is pretty inspirational in itself. So Wall of Honor is this sheet of paper, and if you pass, you can come back and write your name and your number there. And I saw Narbik's name. He was in the upper left, section there. So I didn't pass, so I don't get to write my name. It kind of sucks. There's a fridge with sodas and water. You just walk up and you grab. So, that's pretty nice. Just grab whatever drinks you want. And it's a pretty decent environment to take a test, I would say. I like RTP more than San Jose. San Jose is just depressing. It's like you're just locked in jail. Miami, the mobile lab was pretty good. It was held at a Cisco office. They basically cleared out a conference room. They set up the monitors for that were cool because I guess they just went to Fry's and bought them. But great proctor, 6-time CCIE. He was really helpful. I think he gave us extra time. I don't know if he's supposed to do that, but he's like, I gave you 10 extra minutes. We're like, whoa, that's pretty cool. But the nicest guy. He's not actually a full proctor. He's a kind of like assistant proctor. But I think he told us that he's not a full proctor because he's too nice. There has to be some fear, I guess, in your proctor. Although David Blair, the proctor at RTP, he can seem intimidating at first because there's this part where you have to roll up your sleeves. So I don't know if Tim, did you go through that where you stand? Yeah, okay. So you stand in a semicircle. You go in the test room. He's like, okay, this is the test room. Stand in a semicircle, and if you try to hide in the back, it's like, no. You stand like so I can see you. You roll up your sleeves until the elbow or the upper arm. So he has to look to see if you have like watches and notes and stuff like that. He's looking at all the pockets. So he looks across. He looks at your pants. So okay, is that a wallet? Pull it out. So that was in our room. Like, what's that in your pocket? Type thing. And then so that part can seem intimidating to some people, but he's actually a nice guy. He's a nice guy. You just have to realize that he's the proctor. If you have a question, as long as you know what you're talking about, he'll try to answer it. But if you have no clue what's going on, it's going to be a bad day for you with David. I kind of messed up because I really jacked up in troubleshooting. I had this ticket where they require you to telnet from one thing to the other, and I forgot I had the telnet session open. Right, so I'm on router, let's say 1. I double-click router 1, but router 3 comes up. Because you have the telnet session still stuck in there, right? I thought it was a bug because I had 10 minutes left in troubleshooting. It was like stressing, things are going crazy, right? So I go to Dave and like, hey, something's wrong with my rack here. It's the wrong router coming up. He's like, what? So fall back to the computer and he laughs at me. He's like, you have to exit out. I'm like, oh man, that's CCNA. That's bad. But he's like, that's all right. But,
he can be intimidating, especially in the beginning, and he'll tell you from the very beginning exactly what he can, can't, and will not do. And one of those, just so everyone's aware, as far as hardware issues, he will address hardware issues if and only if you approach him with an expert level analysis as to why it's a hardware issue. And then he'll go through his spiel as to, okay, well, if it's this, then you get this time back or whatnot. But if you don't go to him and you just say, I think it's a hardware issue because I can't ping, he's gonna, even if it is a hardware issue, he's gonna tell you, hey, oh well. So you got to come to him with a expert level analysis as to why you think it's a hardware issue. And let's see, study partners. If we had mentioned earlier about possibly, taking the test the same day, I think that would help lower the stress level in that little scenario that Humphrey painted about sitting in the lobby before the lab starts, right before you meet David Blair, and everyone's just kind of staring at the walls, just nervous. My second attempt, Humphrey, you remember Mike Wong?
Mike Wong, I don't think.
Okay, he was in our class in California. I didn't know he was going to be there. I walk in and he's like, "Hey Tim, hey, what's going on?" And from that point on, I was more relaxed, and it helped me. It really did. He is in the very back.
Oh, this guy back here by Martin.
Yep, that's him.
Okay, I think I do.
So that really made my my attempt a lot less stressful because I mean, you kind of beat yourself up mentally going into it, and if you have somebody there to help you out and kind of break that little that stress and that'll help.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, and it's really weird at San Jose too because when you walk to lunch, it's like a chain gang. Because you have to walk to the cafeteria and you have to walk in a line and you have to stay together. It's like, dude, this is
kindergarten.
This is wrong. This is so wrong. And you have to sit at the same table. You can't sit off by yourself because I guess they think you're going to read some notes or something like that. And it's funny because all the other Cisco employees are looking at you because you're going to a Cisco cafeteria. They're all looking at you and they're like, they want to talk. I guess they can't talk to you or whatever, but just the look on their face, they feel sorry for you. They're like, these poor guys. Oh man. But it's an interesting experience. That lobby is like you could drop a pin and you'd hear it. It's interesting. And you'll see Cisco employees. There's usually like 2 or 3 Cisco employees that take the test. So okay, let's zoom through this. Troubleshooting, yeah. Probably the most common quote I hear, if I only had 10 more minutes, I would have passed troubleshooting. Yeah, man, it's going to be nuts. I'll give you a little tip. This tip I learned from someone else, Dennis D. on the INE forums. He was waiting outside, wasn't waiting for me exactly, but when I finished my lab on May 31st, he was in the parking lot because his test was on Monday. So he was just checking things out. So Dennis was waiting in the parking lot, and we were talking, and he gave me a nice tip. He said, well, Notepad is independent of troubleshooting. It is in configuration. So if you open Notepad, it stays on until you restart the computer. So what he did is he would open up Notepad before you start troubleshooting and throw in all of his show commands, like show run pipe this. So if you're doing multicast, like what would you look for? MSTP, you would look for spars, that type of stuff, right? So do all your show commands. He would also open up all of the doc CD links that he thought he would need later on because it takes a little time for those doc CD links to open. And so he would just leave those doc CD links on throughout the whole test. So he said, well, it saves me about 4 minutes. And then he would click start the troubleshooting section. And I was like, dude, I wish I knew that before. But, I mean, not to say that those 4 minutes would be like the make or break. But, interesting tactic, I think. Also, the thing with opening up the DocCD link is that would confirm that the DocCD works. My last attempt, the DocCD did not work. You double-click on it and just bombed out. And I wasn't the only one. There were some mad people in that room. But looking back at it, it's like, okay, you're supposed to have the DocCD, but would it have meant the difference between pass or fail for me? No. So
they don't guarantee it.
Yeah. It's like, well, it's supposed to be there, but okay, whatever. But yeah, one guy I think he was going to ask for a refund, but it's like, whatever. You got 10 to 11 tickets in 2 hours. It's going to be fast. It's basically. My feeling changed in the last 2 attempts. It's basically the first 2 attempts, do them in order. Big mistake. Last 2 attempts, it's like, okay, do all the 2-pointers, get those out of the way, and then do my 3-pointers. Pile up the 2-pointers, you start feeling really good. Like the last attempt, in 10 minutes, I got two tickets. I was like, dude, I'm passing this thing. And later I ran into a wall, but it's pretty nice after 30 minutes to say, okay, well, I got four questions. If I get 4 more, I'm pretty close. You're gonna definitely fight for every ticket, but on the flip side is after 5 to 7 minutes or 8 minutes, and you have this internal clock on the 3rd and 4th attempt. You're like, okay, I'm spending too long on this. Move, right? But the first 2 times it was like, I'm killing this ticket because I know I failed already, so I'm done here. So at least give me the dignity of solving this, So mental progression. First attempt was, as soon as that topology opened up, I was like, dude, I can't even find the router. Like, router 32, where is it? It's not in order. because it can be tough to find. I didn't get a single ticket after 45 minutes, and it's like, well, okay, let me find a ticket that I can finish. And then I changed my mindset. It's like, okay, let me think like a complete idiot here. Access list. It's like, oh, okay, I got like 3 tickets. This is just an access list blocking stuff. So think simple. On my second attempt, it was like, okay, I've seen this thing before. It's not as bad, but it still kicked my ass. Ran out of time. Third attempt in Miami, the time zone thing. Yeah, 30 minutes was just like, dude, like brain kick into gear, please, type thing. That one, once the brain did kick into gear, I was slamming away on the keyboard until that troubleshooting window closed. And the proctor was really, really good. He would give us a time count every 15 minutes. So it's like, okay, 30 minutes left, 15 minutes left, 5 minutes left. He's not supposed to do that, but that was good. And the tables were arranged in a way where we're facing each other. So candidates are looking at each other. I would just look up at the guy in front of me, and we're just like shaking our head. It's like this is getting bad. And the funny thing is, after the T-shoot window closed, one guy jumped out of his seat and said, "Damn it! I couldn't solve that MPLS ticket. How did you do that?" And the proctor just looked at him. Is like, "What the hell? You're not supposed to like talk about it." But this guy was like, "I couldn't get that MPLS ticket. Like, I couldn't get the internet access." He just like talked for like 30 seconds, and the proctor's like, "Shut up, dude. Just sit down." But yeah, that we were all like, all 7 of us. We turned at this guy. I was like, "Is this happening? Like, what's going on here?" After T-shoot, just think, okay, however you did in T-shoot, stay for config.
You paid for it. Might as well.
For it, yeah. David Blair tells you that. Just you paid for it. Just do it. And what's dangerous is if you think you failed, but maybe you didn't, because David Blair said there's this guy that came in, thought he failed troubleshooting, thought he bombed troubleshooting, so he like wanted to just walk out during config. So David said, "Well, why don't you stay? Do a little bit." And he's like, "Okay, I'll stay for 2 hours." And he kept coming back like every 2 hours and just didn't have his heart in it. And it turned out that he barely failed troubleshooting. So he did fail it, but just barely. And he barely failed config by like 2 or 3 points or whatever. So David's like, just imagine if he passed troubleshooting and he purposely like Harry carried himself in config. Like, that would be the worst feeling. And he says people come back on like their 3rd attempt and later. You generally tend to be harder on yourself. So if it's your first 2 attempts and you think you failed, you did fail on troubleshooting. If it's your 3rd attempt and later, you tend to be more negative on yourself. So maybe you think you barely failed, but it's probably a good chance that you actually passed. Probably because you have like PTSD from your previous attempts and type thing. But stay for config. Now your mental state changes. If you think you got troubleshooting, it can be a little bit more stressful in config, because now it's like, it's mine to lose now, right? Because I have a shot at passing this, so you're like, oh, dude, I got to be really, really good on config now. Versus like my first time when I totally bombed troubleshooting. There is no way, it's like you walk out troubleshooting, it's like, okay, I'm dead. Then config is actually a pleasant experience, because you're like, well, whatever. It's like, I'm here, life is good. I'm here. It's a sick feeling, but it's like, well, I know I failed, so let's just config this the way, the best way I can. And then I finished like an hour early. I'm like, damn, kind of sucks I failed config, but and then you realize like config is not that bad if you just pay attention. You just pay attention. If you know if you know the technology, is not that bad. It's a more pleasant experience than troubleshooting. That's for sure. All right, Tim?
Yeah. So, that was a good good suggestion for the notepad and the doc CD before the troubleshooting. I didn't even think about that. But One thing I wanted to add to that would be window management. I'm going to assume that it's going to be the same. I'm not sure with V5, but regarding the, in the troubleshooting, you open up a command shell window to work on a router, and then you go in somewhere else and it minimizes, and you click on that router again, you open up another one, it'll open up another one, and it'll open up as many as you want. So before you know it, you'll have 15 of them down there, and you're flipping back and forth. So one thing, that was one of my strategies that I changed was, that kind of freaked me out my first attempt. And my second, because I didn't follow my strategy in the second one. So for my third attempt, every single ticket I would close out. When I'm done with it, I close out all my windows, and it really helped manage how many I've got open. And whatever routers I'd be working on, I would open them up in order. So when I go down to the taskbar and click on the one I need to work on, I know exactly where it is. I don't have to search for it. So they're in numerical order, and they're down there. And when I'm done, I close them all out. So that just helps with the clutter and the congestion and sifting through, because you waste a lot of time doing that. So, and then, you mentioned it, think simple on the troubleshooting. That is very true. I mean, you like to think that it's some kind of really, really weird, intricate thing that's going on because you can't figure it out, so you kind of hope it's something really weird, but more than likely than not, it's maybe one, maybe two, for the 2-pointers, something pretty simple, and you're just not looking in the right area. Or maybe not even in the right device. That could be the problem. So, but more often than not, specifically for the 2-pointers, they are pretty easy. The 3-pointers have easy, relatively easy fixes. There's just more of them, and they're in different areas. So, it's not like isolated to one area. It might go across the whole, thing. So, but overall, they are simpler than you would expect. Let's see here. Yeah, that pretty much covers it.
Yep, and one other thing is, like in troubleshooting, depending on what I guess there's different versions of troubleshooting, but on one of my attempts, it's like, I'll tell you, those 2 questions belonged in CCIE security and CCIE service provider, and I think I hit it in Miami because maybe 4 of us got to that section at the same time, and we all looked up, and we all just kind of looked around the room, and like, the fuck did we just do? Like what is, really? Like, you're asking us in this? But yeah, I just looked up and I saw like other people's faces, like, we got the same question, didn't we?
and I like to think that when they're changing up the labs, they know what's out there. They know what's being taught, and they'll throw a couple of wrenches in there. And so, I guess to hedge that, the only thing I could say is, if you don't know what else to study, go to the Master Command Index. I believe that's what it's called, Master Command Index, and go through it. And if there's something you've never seen before, what is it called? Is that what it's called, Humphrey? Master Command Index?
I think it's like the command syntax or command. Yeah, master command something. I'm sure someone will find the exact thing.
Yeah. So, and that's pretty much just an alphabetical list of all the commands in that particular iOS. And that's a great place to go to look, and if you see something that you've never seen before, click on it and see what it is, and maybe you might need to study that. So, I mean, that's really, to me, that's like the last thing. You don't know what to study, go do that, and that hopefully that'll at least give you one extra, a couple extra points in the lab. Yep.
All right, configuration. What are we doing? Oh, so we probably got 30 minutes left here. So you have to understand how Cisco is going to grade config. When you're done with config, you've done WR and you stop the lab, the proctor is going to fire off a grading script. This grading script is going to ping all the addresses, and it's going to look for the restrictions. So it's going to look for words that may have been left in there. It's also going to run show commands to make sure that guy's the DR and stuff like that. So once you realize that this script is going to be working, that gives you a mindset of how to approach your problem. So, like we were talking about frame relay inverse ARP, right? Well, you're sure that there's no dynamic addresses because you typed in no frame relay, inverse ARP, right? but maybe you didn't type it fast enough after you did no shut. Maybe there is one, right? But you've never bothered to check show frame map just to see if something's there.
If you put the IP address on first.
Yeah.
That'll do it.
And so when they run the script, guess what? They're going to see that address. You've lost those points. So they're not looking necessarily for the command in there. They're running a show command to see if there's a dynamic address there. Right? So that's the difference. You also see this grading when you take your Narbix assessments labs during his boot camp. When they come back with that report, it's like a 25-page report, and it's like, we did this ping test and it showed this, type thing. It's a long test. It's going to be 5.5, could be 5 hours if you took time from troubleshooting. And here's the thing: you're on an adrenaline rush from troubleshooting. When you stop troubleshooting, your heart is like going, like your mind is racing. And for config, you need to calm down. And some people take a walk, like walk to the bathroom, come back. That's what my proctor in Miami told me to do. He recommended, it's like, hey, take a walk. No big deal. Get up from the chair, step away from the chair, stretch a little bit, come back. Not a big deal. You definitely need to calm yourself down. In the config, there's some pre-configuration, but for the most part, you're configuring a lot of stuff from scratch. At least in V4. In V5, what Bruno, the manager, says, there's going to be much more config. Pre-configuration. It's going to be a much bigger topology. And as I said, if you see a lot of pre-configuration in OSPF, they'll say like, oh, by the way, we've configured most of OSPF for you. Oh man, be very scared on that. Certain tasks will make your life difficult. Layer 2, oh yeah, what can they possibly throw at me with layer 2? Oh yeah, they could throw something that creates a loop. Security, especially security. Any type of access list that will block stuff later, like HSRP or VRRP that you don't pay attention to. Time management. If you're spending too much time on a multicast problem, well, maybe you don't need to do that problem. Just skip it, leave it till the end, type thing. Pacing. Don't do Cisco's questions in order. That's bad. Even Bruno, he has a video where he answers questions. Bruno, the guy who runs the CCIE program, says, do not do our questions in order. So if he says that, you better pay attention to that. So leave MPLS and multicast till the end. That type of stuff. There's landmines. You're going to be you're going to be led down this road, and then there's a guy with a knife waiting to rob you at the end of the road. Stamina, we talked about that. There's lots of caffeinated drinks in there. You have to get used to labbing. Most people who pass, actually probably every person I've talked to who has passed, has told me that they finished config 1 to 2 hours early. Usually it's 2. So you've gone through the first round 2 hours early, and now it's checking your work, and you find so much. It's like verify, show commands. Are all that VLANs really there? Is VTP really correct? That type of stuff. Did I leave a router OSPF 1 hanging somewhere? That type of stuff. There is a temptation to just bail. I'm done. I know I passed. Yeah, you hear that sometimes. I know I passed config. And they walk out like an hour early. You get your score report. Didn't pass. Practice labbing under those conditions. I know when we had our D-Day group, I had a stopwatch application running in the upper right-hand corner. So I'd be talking. It's like, dude, John, I finished up to layer 2 or all of layer 2 in like 30 minutes. Yeah. First time I did this, it took me 2 hours, type thing. I brought in earplugs. If you're used to if you're going to do the lab with earplugs, then practice labbing with the earplugs. And Narbix boot camp on Thursday night, that helped a lot, definitely. Okay, configuration.
All right. Yeah. So my first attempt, like I already said, I bombed it completely. So there's really nothing significant to talk about that one. Second attempt, I did get in a 2-hour suck. There was one particular part right in the middle of it. Actually, it was right in the heart of layer 3 that I just could not figure out. And it took me 2 hours. It really did. Because, I mean, what's the point of moving on? I really couldn't because everything else was on top of that, so I had to figure it out. It was something fairly simple in layer 2 that I probably should have searched for in the very beginning. So, unfortunately, I couldn't have just, skipped it and went on because it was something that they broke and that I needed to find to fix. But with that said, if there is something that is, you find maybe you're taking 20 minutes of trying to get something up and running, so let's say something in layer 2 because everything else depends on it. Let's say you're required to, there's an ether channel and something is supposed to go over the ether channel or whatnot and it's not coming up or something's going on and you can't figure it out. Give it some time, but, I wouldn't give it more than like 20 minutes or something. And then, that's the max. And then I just go ahead and break the rules, get it to work, lose those points and move on. And if you finish early, you can go back to it and try to well, yeah, if it's only 2 points, you might not want to mess with layer 2, as Humphrey learned. But, yeah, but, if you feel confident that you know what the problem was, you go back and you could fix it later. But the point is, you would only lose the 2 points instead of losing the 40 that's riding on top of it. One of my study partners took the lab the last week. It was like May 28th, something like that. And that's what got him. So it was his 4th attempt as well. And I asked him, I'm like, well, did you just, let it open up the ports or something or do whatever, just break it? And he goes, no, I forgot. And that goes right in line with, us being engineers. It's very hard for us to, purposely break it to move on quickly. But you have to do that for this lab if you need to. So that would have saved me 2 hours, and I feel that I did fairly well for what I did, but if I had 2 more hours, I probably would have passed. But I failed the troubleshooting anyway, so it didn't matter. 3rd attempt. I actually did finish 2 hours early on the config. Well, actually, going into lunch, I did hear that a good benchmark, that you're doing a pretty good job as far as timeline goes, if when you go into lunch, you got all your layer 3 up. Well, I had just started configuring OSPF. So I didn't even get to BGP yet, and I still had OSPF to go, redistribution and whatnot. So I was kind of stressed in lunch. I'm like, I need to really get on it when we finish lunch. Can we hurry this up, And I get back in there, and I start cracking away at it, and it just, everything kind of laid in place. I knew exactly what they were asking for. And before I knew it, I looked forward, and I'm like, okay, well, there's the end. And I get to the end, and I had 2 hours left. So I went back and checked my work 4 times, the entire test. And then I sat there and kept checking stuff, and I said, you know what? If there's something wrong, I don't know what it is, and I'm not going to get it from here on out. And I actually, 30 minutes early, I went ahead and just closed out. And that was it. So I was pretty confident at that time. Generally, like Humphrey said, the guys that pass, they could finish early, and they're pretty confident that they passed. Especially because if they finish early, they have time to go back and double check. And when I did go double check, I did find several things that I missed. So I'm glad that I had that extra time, and that would have cost a lot of points. So I'm not saying rush it, but get to the point to where you just want to be at the point to where you're going through it, and you're not spending so much time trying to figure out how something works. If you can just see the task, know what they're looking. I mean, the first thing you got to know what they're looking for. If they don't tell you, if it's not in the heading, then you got to kind of decipher what they're looking for. And then, hopefully, they don't ask for something else, like some service provider thing that Humphrey might have seen, or a security thing. So, that's it. It just 2 hours early, and I was hoping I passed the troubleshooting and everything worked. So, yep.
Yeah, definitely a different feeling, config versus troubleshooting. Different mindset.
Yes. Yeah.
All right, lunchtime. We'll zoom through this. So, $1,500 for your test. If you take the mobile lab $1,750 or $1,800, whatever it is now. It's a pretty crappy lunch. Don't expect sirloin steak. San Jose, it's a cafeteria. At RTP, they cater it in on a weekday. If you took the lab like I did on a weekend, they order it in. It's barbecue. lots of hot sauce in there. David Blair loves his hot sauce. Don't eat heavy food. I made that mistake the first time. I was like, I failed, so I might as well have a Philly cheesesteak. And I was paying for it. I was just like, bleh. In the Miami lab, we all had salad and something light, and gets through the day a lot easier. You have to take your lunch. You have to eat together. You can't go back to config. Although depending on the proctor, he might say, okay, well, 20-minute lunch. Okay, go back. You can config now. It's up to the proctor. If he's feeling charitable, he'll let you go back. The whole, everyone, go back after 20 minutes if everyone's fast. But he's under no obligation to do that. And during lunch, you could talk to your proctor, and he'll answer questions. In our group, there was a guy. He was pissed that he failed troubleshooting. He was mad. He was an I&E guy too. I will not mention. He wasn't like one of the Bryans, but he wasn't working for I&E, but he'd gone through I&E's boot camp. He was so mad, and he's like, "How do you?" He was asking, "How do I practice this? How do I practice troubleshooting?" And David Blair's like, "Everyone troubleshoots differently. I could show you how I troubleshoot, but that doesn't make sense for you. Everyone does show commands in a different order, let's say." He explained it like David Blair took a lot of martial arts. So some guys like to come in and punch you. Some guys like to come in and just kick you. Some guys stand away, wait for you to punch, and then kick you. Some people like to grapple, and people do different things. Speaking of proctors, the proctor at Miami, awesome quote. We were talking at lunch. If Cisco tells you to paint the table red, you paint the damn table red. There's no discussion. The table may look better blue, but if you paint it blue, you'll fail. So if they tell you to do it this way, and you like, oh, I think I'll go my own. I'll go rogue. It's just you'll fail. David Blair, good advice. Never give up. It's a 2-part test. Everyone troubleshoots differently. It's just he says that he actually thinks in V5 that it's designed to where you won't give up as easily. Now it's like if you failed troubleshooting, you just give up. Like mentally, you're done, right? You're just kind of going through the motions on config. But now it's like if you barely failed, you think you barely failed troubleshooting, you still have a chance. That's what he was telling us. And also Bruno says that too. So there's a minimum score that you'll have to get on V5 on each section. But if you can fail a section, quote unquote, fail a section and still pass the whole test if you kick ass in config, which is cool. Like you have like redemption later on. But in V4 there was no redemption. If you failed troubleshooting, you failed. Like you're done for the day. Okay. Lunchtime and wisdom. I think, you went to RTP, so your lunch was very similar, I think, to mine.
Yeah, it was very oily pasta, so.
Oh, God.
All 3 times.
Oh, man. Okay. They cater it in on the weekdays?
It was in, a little catered with the Bunsen burners and everything, or the little burners on the bottom of it. Yeah. Terrible food.
Yeah. $1,500, I want steak. Man, come on.
Yeah, he actually he encouraged, he'll look in your bag to see what you got in your bag, and he'll see some candy bars and some Red Bulls, and he'll encourage, well, you only brought 2 Red Bulls? Come on, man, the last guy brought 4.
Yeah. I think next time if I go to RTP, I'll bring a MRE. I was just surprised, like MRE just start heating it on the table. He'll probably go, "What the?" Chicken a la king, MRE, man. Come on.
Finish it off with an MRE bomb. That'll freak everyone out. There you go.
Yeah. Did you guys talk to David a lot at your, or was he very talkative during your lunches?
Not when I was there. He didn't speak a lot during lunch. More of just one-on-one. I made sure to approach him. That's one thing I would like to suggest to everyone is I didn't do it after my first attempt. But one of my other study partners I was just talking about, he had told me, he works for Cisco, but he had told me he had talked to David, and David will he will help if he sees that you're working hard, that you know what you're talking about, and if you approach him in the right way, he'll give you some pretty good advice. I mean, like for instance, you can't get your BGP peer up to the backbone. He might throw you a bone and tell you, because I had that problem once, and I'm like, it says to find it any way possible, so I'm going to ask you. so that's, you said anyway, I'm asking you, and he kind of gave me the nod, and he's like, well, try from one way. If that doesn't work, try from the other way. Just kind of, that's what it was. I mean, so it was really easy, but he guided me in the right direction. And he did for one of my other buddies too. So, but the point is to I would recommend building that relationship. Let him see your face. Let him know who you are the first time you go. So if you have to go back again, let him see your face again. And the more he sees your face, the more you engage with him, asking him questions or whatever. Who knows? Maybe he might. If there's an easier test, maybe he'll give you that one. I don't know. But, it doesn't hurt, right? Yeah. The proctor knows you, then, hey, that's a good thing.
Yeah. Yeah. When we started on May 31st, he walked in and was like, okay, this is going to be easy because all of you have been here 3 or 4 times, either with me or another proctor. So all of you are third attempt or later. And we're like, damn. So another thing with Fabian is he was pretty inspirational because during lunch we were like, dude, you have 6 CCIEs. What the hell? And he's like, yeah, I've been to the lab 15 times if you total up all the different CCIEs. And we're like, how do you do it? Like, and he talked about how he studies and stuff like that. But he basically says, be prepared for sacrifice. He's like, I suffered terribly by getting these 6 CCIEs, And he actually used the words, I've suffered terribly. So we're like, wow, that's pretty hardcore. But he was basically like, if you fail, don't take a break. Don't say, okay, I'll take a month off and come back. It's too hard to re-up and get back. After a month, it's too rough. So he said, well, if he failed, he'd be studying right away. And that gets us into after the test. What happens after the test? Pass or fail, you belong to a special club. So pass or fail, you're one of us. And what's interesting is I talk to CCIEs now, so they have a CCIE, they know I failed. It's like, dude, you're one of us. Even though he failed, it's like you've been to the lab, so that's good enough for us. It's kind of like so there's a question later on where it's like, Humphrey, why have you failed so many times? And that's a valid question. When I was walking out of that lab, I was walking out with another guy, and he was beside himself. He's like, so he knew he failed, and he said, I've done every workbook. I've watched every video. I've done every practice lab, and I failed. I don't know how much more I could study. Like, if I study more, it wouldn't have made a difference today, type thing, right? And it gets back to, like, if you've been in the military, you've been to boot camp. I've been to a sheriff's academy. You have these things where they inspect you. You could have the shiniest shoes. Your nameplate is polished, belt buckle shined. There's no missing thread. Everything's perfectly pressed. Guess what? They'll find something wrong. Sometimes you can't win. I mean, sometimes you do everything that you possibly can, and it's not going to work. It's Cisco's game, and everything pinged. Everything did traceroute right, but maybe you didn't do it the way Cisco wanted, right? So, what can you say to that? It's just, that's the luck thing sometimes. But ask yourself, if you fail, okay, did you do better than last time? Are you a better engineer now? So, even though I failed 4 times, am I better than when I first started? Oh, hell yeah. Much faster, know the technologies more. So, resist the urge to just run back to your hotel and just, go under the cover and, that's bad. Go to your car, write down everything. I brought a little MP3 recorder, and I just dictated it in there. These are your personal notes. Don't upload them anywhere. You can't tell people about them. But if you can't pass the lab that you know, which is the one that you already took, how can you pass the lab that you don't know? Right? I think someone else has said this. Maybe Roger Perkin said this, but yeah, you write down everything. If you messed up MPLS, go back, lab some MPLS. Stay in the parking lot. I've done this every attempt. I was like, hey, who needs a ride back to the hotel? Who needs a ride to the airport? Miami, I took a guy back to his hotel, and then I took another guy to the airport because he had like a 6 o'clock flight, which I think is stupid, but hey, what are you gonna do? Make friends, exchange business cards. I still keep in touch with the folks from Miami. I met Ethan. Ethan's listening on this on my second attempt in San Jose. We met at then we had dinner at Panera Bread. Drowned out our sorrows. My last attempt, we went to Hooters. Maybe not the best place to go, but whatever, right? And then when John passed, we went to Cheesecake Factory. Get back on the horse. Study. When I failed in Miami, that same night I started labbing again. And John was like, "Dude, you're not going to take a break?" I was like, "No, I'm pissed off now." Like, use that anger. If you're mad, don't just sit there and be mad. I mean, okay, you're mad. Give yourself until 9 p.m. or whatever. Okay, I'm cool with being mad until 9, and then after that, it's like, okay, done, right? John had this thing where he got kind of upset with people asking him, "Oh, did you pass? Did you pass?" Like every time he goes back. So it's like, okay, you just have to get used to that. How would I describe it? If you watch the film Edge of Tomorrow, new film out now, Tom Cruise, it's where he keeps dying and comes back. And that kind of is the experience of CCIE. You fail, you learn from it, and you come back. You get killed again. Okay, you learn some more, come back. And eventually you kick ass. That's exactly how it's very much like this movie. Even if you're not going for CCIE, see the movie, it's awesome. But that pretty much describes it. So that's after the test, exchange cards. You have a tremendous networking opportunity. All of you have been through some shit, so make the best of it. Don't just like bail off to the airport afterwards. You get some new buddies after this. Some new study partners. Many of them have joined RouterGods after I told them about it. Like, dude, there's a study group for this? I did this on my own without workbooks. Like I've talked on my first attempt. Oh yeah, I just did the document CD. It's like, dude, that's hardcore.
Yeah.
But yeah. So, okay, Tim.
Yeah, I mean, that's the first thing I did on all 3 attempts. I had my little notebook ready for me, waiting in my vehicle when I got out. So as soon as I got out, I ran right to my truck and started dictating everything on the top of my head. From the topics to the problems I had, to what I wasn't sure about. Does this work with this? Whatever I didn't know, I wrote down. Tried to remember the topology the best I could. And I think every time I wrote it down, I think it was wrong, but I did the best I could. And that really does help because whenever you don't know, if you get to a point where like, okay, I've gone through labs and everything, what do I do now? I always went back to that. I'm like, okay, is there something on here that I still don't understand? Because if I get the same test again and I fail it again, I'm gonna be really pissed. But I didn't get the same test, but it's possible. I've heard of it happening. So even though the odds are you won't get the same test, you don't want to fail it when you get the same test twice. So I didn't hang out much after my labs. I just took off. I did end up seeing one of the other test takers in the line to turn in my rental car, and we started talking there. And we talked each other's ear off all the way until waiting for our plane that was delayed and everything, so a couple hours. But I mean, I got most of my networking contacts from the boot camps I went to, and but yeah, I just can't stress enough to just write everything down afterwards. Be prepared for that.
Yep. Cool. All right, we're almost to the end. Hang in there. Some myths. You've heard this before. If you're solid on core, just look everything else up and you'll pass. Bull crap on that. Yeah, let's say you are God on everything up to BGP. Oh, let's say IPv6. Okay, let's say you are God on everything up to IPv6. You will get every question right. You will fail. Just because there's so much services and multicast and other stuff that they throw in there. This may have been valid for V3 possibly, but definitely not for V4 and well, we can't say for sure on V5, but I'm going to guess it's the same. It's the same way. You've heard this, maybe I even said it. CCIE is like CCNP except with more configuration. No. I don't know how worse is CCIE versus CCNP. It's not that it's worse. It is, but it's different. I mean, CCNP you had some simulation. It's a multiple choice question, but you don't have the stress of $1,500 about to burn from your hands. It's a different beast, completely different beast. Third, you hear people. I'm going to wait until I'm 100% ready. And then I'll take the lab. It's like, you'll never take the lab. I mean, at some point, you just have to say, well, let's go for it. Right? Let's go for it. Narvik told us, is like, you'll be waiting a long time. It's like, because you don't know what your lab is going to be like. You've never taken it before. You don't know. So how do you know if you're 100% ready? And then myth number 4, there's a best way to study. Like, INE's the best way, or Narvik's the best way, or this or that, and there just isn't. I mean, it's like, okay, I did INE, I did Narvik, I bought the routing bits book. Of course, you did the Doyle, the routing TCP/IP books, the Halibi BGP books. I did all of CCNP first. I did CCIP. That's just my path. People are different. Right? And also throw in member questions on this, and then you'll take it on myths and member questions. FTAB, let's see. Mastering workbooks or technologies is not sufficient. Yeah, because it's also mental. It's also a mind game. Now, definitely, if you can't do the workbooks, then you'll just fail. But yeah, I mean, just like the guy walking out of the lab exam, he's saying, yeah, I've done every workbook. I've done everything multiple times, and I still failed. Yeah, sometimes that luck factor comes into play. What else needs to be done to clear this exam? Just a lot of practice, just determination. What's the best way to approach V5? We don't know. No one's taken V5 yet in our group, so we don't know. I mean, but the topics don't look that much different. The thing is the diagnostic thing is the one that's up in there. I don't know, right? Wen Williams has a question. How are you able to adjust after the failed attempts, and how do you continue motivating yourself? Tim talked about it. I have too much time invested to quit. Can't quit, right? You don't want to be that guy. Well, that guy did it 4 times, and then he just stopped, right? How do you advise people working full-time and thinking of self-studying? Well, Tim did it. I've done it for a lot. I think most of the people who do CCIE have a full-time job. Many people, if not the majority. You find the time. You wake up at 4:30 in the morning. Or if you only have an hour or 2 at night, you just do it for a year straight, type thing. You push things off, like you cut out TV. You cut out movies. Like, I hadn't watched a movie for like 6-7 months. I haven't watched TV in 2 years until after John passed. We watched the Discovery Channel, and that shit was amazing. Siberian Cut and Deadliest Catch. We're like, oh, this stuff exists. Wow, type thing. It's pretty amazing. And if people should only think of CCIE when they have an advanced network position. So is CCIE just for people high up in networking? I would probably agree. You definitely wouldn't want to do this like, let's say you've never done networking before, so you just decide to do CCIE off the bat. Probably not a good idea. If you're like the A+ guy at work and you decide to do CCIE, I would say do CCNA and CCNP first and then think. CCIE right off the bat, probably not a good idea. Scott has a good question. Why do you think you failed this many times? First 2 times, not prepared, didn't lab enough. You could probably say that for the 3rd and 4th time. 3rd time got hit with that wonderful service provider type question. But, sometimes you do everything right and you still fail. What can you say? Were you distracted? No. Though a lot of the stint there was I had quit work, studying full time. I'm single, so there's no family or women unless you count the ones in Thailand. But no, not really. Can't really say other than maybe addiction to YouTube once in a while. But sometimes it's all you, or all myself. You can't blame anyone else. And that's the thing. If you're looking for an excuse, like if you see the INE forums, I failed because the keyboard was different. Really. Or there's this awesome thing on the Cisco Learning Networks right now. Are the machines upgraded to Windows 7? What does that? Should I make my computer Windows 7? It's like, dude, really? Like, is that gonna help? So if you blame these other things like, the putty acts a little different. Fine. Is that a pass fail? Is it a make or break? If you're that on the edge, you're in bad shape. Yeah, but that's the thing. Yeah, so why do you think I failed this many times? Well, sometimes you do everything right. Yeah, if I knew, then. But it's you can't beat yourself up after failing. It's the wrong way. It's the wrong way to go. But having a supportive family, supportive friends that go, well, just keep doing it. Study group as well. All right, Tim, myths and these member questions here.
All right. I see Alex over there asked if I think this was going back up to is CCIE like the CCNP except with more configuration. I think that's when you put it in there. You asked if it was compared to T-Shoot. CCNP T-Shoot is a great place to start for troubleshooting for CCIE. It's just significantly less. Everything. So I guess times that time, as far as the scope of it, times, I don't know, 5 or 10. But it's a great place to start, and even go back to. What else do I study now? Hey, let me do the T-Shoot again. So I've heard that from several people. That's still a valid, a good starting point. And let's see, comment on when asked about advice for people for full time. One thing that Narbek suggested, and this is a good thing to think about, is he said, don't just sit there and lock yourself in your basement for 6 months, a year, whatever, and come out with a full beard and ready to take the lab, and that's it. Because once you take and pass the lab, it doesn't stop there. I mean, you have to continue. Obviously, not nearly as intense, but to maintain, you have to continue to study and whatnot. If you don't do it every day at work, or if you do, then great. But what his suggestion was, and this is what he does, that maybe when his kids go to sleep, he'll stay up an extra 2 hours and do some labs or something, and find time, or wake up a little bit early, and things like that. That way, it doesn't necessarily affect the family too much, and that's very important because you got to keep them. They're your rock. You got to have your family backing you up, and if you neglect them to get through this lab, and then you continue to neglect them, well, it's just not good. Or if you neglect them and then you're done and that's it, then you're going to lose everything you just worked so hard to get. So you might have the numbers, but then your skills just go away. So you have to find that balance, and you have to keep that balance because that's what you're going to need to be good in this field. Let's see. I think that's pretty much all I wanted to comment on that.
Okay. Yeah, let's see. Yeah, we're almost pretty much done. Okay, so John was a little shy, but I asked him if he had some advice. And so John passed on the very last day, so June 3rd. As if passing CCIE wasn't hard enough, he waited for the very last day. No, the spot opened up and he grabbed it. So theoretically, if no one passed in San Jose, he could be the last V4 CCIE, very possibly. So we're asking, what advice? So we all adjusted our sleep schedules. I think when he got back to Irvine or back home, he had a nice family dinner, and he said your family, you have to be completely committed. Your family needs to support you. If you don't have that, just don't start. There's no shame in saying, okay, CCIE is too crazy, let me get CCNP. There's no shame in that. I talked with we have a Cisco SE that services our area. She's an Olympian, like a real Olympian, and works at Cisco on the side or something. Like, I don't know how that exactly works, but Cisco wants all their SEs to be CCIEs. And she basically told me, you know what? I know what the time commitment is. No. There's no shame in that. Better to find out now than later, after you've sunk in like 2,000 hours. So John says he was studying on the weekends. This I know. He would go find a library and, Saturday and Sunday just to get away from the family. Constantly pull up videos and lab books, break down the technologies. Yeah, we went a lot over MPLS because he didn't really do a lot of MPLS, and I showed him a little bit. And find people on the same wavelength as you, just going through the same stuff. And one of the cool things was we were all in the D-Day group, and we're all studying at night. So if I shot off an email or John shot off an email, that everyone's looking. Everyone has their Gmail up, and we're able to answer it right away. It's like, hey, what do you think about this type thing? So that's advice from John Shin, CCIE 44026. And after you get your CCIE, the jobs just like fall from the sky, basically. I know it's happened to John. Cisco contacted him like out of the blue. So that could be like their job interview type thing. It's like, oh, he passed, type thing. But it's definitely a lot easier looking for jobs afterwards. Okay, I know it's getting late for Tim. See, he's on the East Coast. In the chat window, anyone have any last questions for us? Oh, wait a minute or two. But I think this video should live forever on the internet and serve as anyone going for a CCIE, watch this video, and it'll give you an idea. When are we starting V5 meetups? Well, Josh was already doing his set. He's doing the V4 book because the V5 book by Narvik isn't out yet. And I know the date keeps getting pushed back, and it was like March, and then April, and then May. Some of that's not exactly Narvik's fault, although Narvik just doesn't have time. I mean, it's just I don't know when he sleeps. So I think what I'll do with V5 is I'm going to get Sniffer certified first. That way I get the packet analysis stuff, and then I'll start Sniffer classes. I think that's like maybe one way to prepare for the diagnostic section, and then we'll do like DMVPN and stuff like that. But Josh was definitely welcome to do V5 because he's run like the new batch of guys going for CCIE. Yeah, INE just did a Wireshark class, so I'm cool with learning Wireshark. It's fine, and then doing some classes. But we don't know exactly when V5 meetups will start again. Okay, any other questions? Yeah, he's definitely got empty boxes. Where's my future going? I can't say exactly right now because we're being recorded. Because many of my coworkers are on this meetup. So, yeah. But, I'm going to get the Sniffer cert out of the way. I'm actually going to crank out CCNP wireless. So I'm going to get schedule CCNA wireless next week. I'm using the Anger to do something different. We have another member of the group who the guy we all thought would pass before all of us, who's actually technically much better than myself, I think. What kind of messed him up, and this is where just some things are out of your control. it was a money issue on scheduling the lab. If he would have had the money, I think he would be a CCIE right now, if he could have moved his lab date. But he is going CCIE service provider, and then maybe going back to routing and switching. I think that's a viable option, because they're starting to ask a crapload of MPLS in routing and switch, so it kind of makes sense.
They are very similar.
Yeah, you'll be surprised if you look at the service provider syllabus. You'll go, dude, this is like. It's kind of funny when they do the layer 2 stuff. It's like, oh, here we're gonna make a trunk. It's like, oh, stop me now type thing. But like CCNA wireless, like, oh, you got to be careful. You have to make a trunk to this wireless LAN controller. It's like, oh, really? Come on. So going back to CCNA or CCNP after attempting CCIE, it's fun. It's like, all right. It's not too bad. So Ethan says, no troubleshooting in service provider. That is another thing that was said. Routing and switching now is 3 sections that you have to study. Service provider is 1. They mix in the troubleshooting, but you don't have that 2-hour like guillotine hanging over you. So, so some people do that. I know someone, I will not mention his name. I won't say whether he's in the meetup or not. No, I shouldn't say that. But, okay, so one thing is, if you can't pass routing and switching because you keep getting your ass kicked, there's no shame in going for another CCIE that's easier. So I'm not going to say what track, but other tracks, because they don't have the troubleshooting, the 4 people from Argentina on my second attempt, these all 4 went for routing and switching, and they switched to service provider because they were getting their ass kicked in troubleshooting. So they're like, F this, just do service provider. Yeah. Hey, it's still CCIE. Okay. One more question, and I think we're going to call it. Service provider can't be that easy. Well, if you don't have troubleshooting in 2 hours. And whatever diagnostic will be, which no one has any clue about right now. But okay, cool. Well, we have recorded this, so this will be up tomorrow or the next day. It's been it's like 2.5 hours. Tim, thanks, congratulations.
Thank you.
You will live in infamy, or you will be famous forever on YouTube, giving people advice. And and thank you everyone else for coming. I think this has been a really good one. We had like 50 people in the watching, and there's going to be like thousands of people later watching this thing. So thank you very much, and we are out of here.
All right.
Okay.